Hello, everyone, and welcome back to X-Ranger. Before we begin, I thought it would be interesting if each of you could leave a comment indicating which part of the world you're joining us from. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Now let's get comfortable, relax, and start our program. The scream wasn't human. It wasn't an animal either. I've worked these forests for 15 years, and I know every sound these woods can make. This was different. This was the night that changed everything I thought I knew about these mountains. My name is Sven Anderson. I'm a forest ranger at the Mount Hood National Forest in Oregon. The events I'm about to describe happened on October 12, 2022. I was working the night shift in Tower 7, one of our more remote observation posts. It sits at 4,200 feet elevation, surrounded by dense forest on all sides. The tower is a standard 60-foot fire lookout, steel frame, glass windows on all sides, a small cot in one corner, a radio system, some basic supplies, a coffee maker that's seen better days. That night, I had the heat on low. The temperature outside was 38 degrees Fahrenheit. A thin layer of fog hung between the trees. I'd been up there since 4 p.m., standard 12-hour shift. Nothing unusual in the first few hours. I did my regular checks, logged the weather, watched for smoke, made some coffee, ate my sandwich, called in my hourly reports. Normal stuff. At 11:42 p.m., I heard the first crack, a branch breaking. Big one by the sound of it. Not unusual in itself. Could be an elk, could be a black bear, but something made the hair on my neck stand up. The sound came from the north side, about 150 feet from the tower base. I grabbed my spotlight. Standard procedure when checking disturbances. It's a 1,000,000 power beam, lights up everything within 200 yards. I swept it across the tree line. Nothing at first, just fog and shadows. Then I saw movement, big movement. Not like a deer slipping through brush, not like a bear lumbering past. This was tall, massive. The figure stood at least 8 feet high. It moved between two Douglas firs that I know are 12 feet apart. Its shoulders nearly touched both trunks. The smell hit me next. Sharp, musty, like wet dog mixed with something rotten, but stronger than any animal I've ever encountered. The wind was coming from the north at 5 minutro. The odor filled the tower cabin in seconds. My hands started shaking. The spotlight beam wobbled. Sweat ran down my back despite the cold. I reached for the radio with my left hand, knocked over my coffee cup. Didn't care. My eyes stayed fixed on the tree line. Tower 7 to base. Come in base. My voice sounded strange in my ears. Too high. Too tight. Static answered. Then Larry's voice. Base here. Go ahead, Tower 7. I've got... I stopped. What exactly did I have? What was I seeing? I've got a large animal, north side, moving through Sector 4. The figure stepped forward. One stride covered about 6 feet. Smooth movement, not jerky like a bear, not bouncing like an elk, just smooth, deliberate steps. The light caught its fur, dark brown or black, thick, matted in places. Can you identify the species? Larry's voice crackled through the radio. Another step. The figure turned slightly. I saw its arm, long, muscular, covered in the same dark fur. The hand, if you could call it that, was huge. Fingers curled into a fist bigger than my head. Negative, I said into the radio. My mouth had gone dry. I swallowed hard. It's bipedal, 8 feet plus, moving upright. Silence from the radio, 10 seconds, 20. Then, say again, Tower 7. The figure stopped, turned its head toward the tower. The spotlight caught its face. Broad, heavy brow. Deep-set eyes reflected the light like copper coins, not like animal eyeshine. Different. More like human eyes, but larger. Those eyes looked straight at me. My legs went weak. I gripped the desk edge. The smell got stronger. My stomach churned. "It's looking at me," I said into the radio. My voice had dropped to a whisper. "Jesus Christ, it's looking right at me." The creature's head tilted slightly, like it was studying me, evaluating, thinking. That's what got me the most. Not the size, not the strength you could see in every movement. It was the intelligence in those eyes, the awareness. A sound came from it then, low at first, building, not a growl, not a roar, something between a rumble and speech. It vibrated through the tower structure, made the windows hum, lasted 12 seconds. I know because I looked at my watch later, checking the log time. Then it turned, moved back into the trees. 3 long strides, and the darkness swallowed it. The smell lingered. The windows kept vibrating for a few more seconds. Tower 7, we're sending up Rangers Johnson and Martinez. ETA 40 minutes. Stay in the tower. Over. I stayed at the window, spotlight beams sweeping the trees. Nothing moved. The forest had gone silent. No owls, no nighthawks, no wind in the branches, just dead silence. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I fumbled for my logbook. Standard procedure. Document everything. Time, weather conditions, details of the sighting. My handwriting was barely readable. Johnson and Martinez arrived at 12:38 a.m. They searched the area with flashlights, found the tracks first, 18 inches long, 8 inches wide at the ball of the foot, 6 inches at the heel. Deep impressions. The soil was hard from a week without rain. Something weighing at least 800 pounds had made those tracks. They found broken branches too, fresh breaks. 8 feet up, 10 feet, 12 feet. Bark rubbed off in places, dark hairs stuck in the sap. They collected samples, standard evidence bags, took photos, measured everything. The smell stayed until dawn, even after the morning wind picked up, even after the sun rose. That heavy, musty odor hung in the air. Stayed in my clothes, stayed in my nose. Took 3 washings to get it out of my uniform. The lab results came back 2 weeks later. The hair samples didn't match any known species. The photos of the track showed dermal ridges, like fingerprints, not something you see in animal tracks. The stride length measurements suggested a creature over 8 feet tall, moving at a walking pace. I've been back in Tower 7 many nights since then. Haven't seen it again. But sometimes when the fog rolls in and the forest goes quiet, I smell that odor. Faint, just at the edge of perception. And I know it's out there, moving through its territory, watching, waiting. The official report lists it as an unidentified large mammal. Standard bureaucratic language. But I know what I saw. I know what I smelled. I know what I heard. Here are the facts, just as they happened. Date, October 12th, 2022. Time, 11:42 p.m. to approximately midnight. Location, Mount Hood National Forest, Tower 7. Weather, 38 degrees, light fog, 5 mph north wind. Visual observation, bipedal creature, approximately 8.5 feet tall. Physical evidence, 18-inch tracks, hair samples, broken branches up to 12 feet high. Auditory evidence, branch breaking, vocalization lasting 12 seconds. Olfactory evidence, strong musty odor, persistent witnesses. Primary observation by myself. Physical evidence documented by Rangers Johnson and Martinez. Laboratory findings. Hair samples, unknown species. Tracks show dermal ridges. Those are the facts. Make of them what you will. But remember, I've spent 15 years in these forests. I know every animal, every track, every sound. This was something else, something that shouldn't exist, but does. I don't expect anyone to believe me. I'm not sure I would believe it myself if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. But it happened. Every detail I've shared is exactly as I experienced it. No embellishment, no exaggeration. Just the raw facts of what I encountered that night in Tower 7. I still work the night shift, still watch the forests, still do my job. But I watch the tree line more carefully now, listen more intently. And when the fog rolls in and the forest goes quiet, I remember those eyes looking up at me. Intelligent eyes. Aware eyes. Eyes that knew exactly what they were looking at. The forest holds its secrets. That night, it showed me one of them. I don't know if it will ever show itself to me again, but I know it's out there, moving through the darkness, watching, waiting, real as the ground beneath our feet and the air we breathe. That's my story. Take it for what it is, the straight, unvarnished account of what happened that night in Tower 7. No more, no less. Just the facts as I experience them. Just the truth as I know it. Story 2. My name is Thaddeus McPherson. I've been a park ranger in Oregon for 15 years. What happened that night in October 2023 changed everything I thought I knew about these forests. It started as a routine night patrol. I was checking the eastern perimeter of the park, an area where we'd had reports of illegal campers. The air was cold. My breath made clouds in the beam of my flashlight. The moisture from an earlier rain still clung to everything. I parked my truck at Junction Point and started walking the trail. My boots squeaked against the wet gravel. The trees were just black shapes against a darker sky. My flashlight beam cut through the fog in straight white lines. At 11:42 p.m., I reached Cedar Creek. The water was high from the rain. It made that hollow, rushing sound that drowns out everything else. I swept my light across the bank, checking for camping gear or fire rings. The beam caught something in the mud. I stopped. My hand tightened on the flashlight. There was a footprint, but not like any I'd seen before. I've tracked everything in these woods. Bear, elk, cougar. This was different. The print was huge. I put my size 12 boot next to it. The print was almost twice as long, about 45 centimeters, I'd guess. It was clearly a foot, 5 toes, a deep arch, a wide heel, but massive. And it walked like a person, 1 foot in front of the other, not like a bear's pigeon-toed waddle. I found another print, then another. They came out of the creek and headed east into the trees. The stride length was enormous. I had to stretch to step from one print to the next. My radio crackled. Static. I jumped. Henderson from dispatch asking for a location check. I reported my position. My voice sounded strange in my ears. I should have called it in. Should have requested backup. But I didn't. I followed the prints instead. The mud changed to pine needles. Harder to see the tracks. But something big had come through here. Broken twigs, bent branches, signs you learn to read after years in the woods. The beam of my flashlight caught movement ahead. I froze, just branches swaying in the wind. But there was no wind. I smelled it then. A heavy, musky odor, like wet fur and something else, something wild. The hair on my neck stood up. My mouth went dry. A branch cracked overhead, not a small branch. The sound echoed through the trees. I swung my light up. About 8 feet high, a thick branch was snapped clean off, fresh. The white wood gleamed in my flashlight beam, sap still dripping. Another crack, closer, behind me. I turned. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Nothing, just trees and shadows. But the shadows seemed deeper now, more solid. My heart was hammering in my chest. Sweat ran down my back despite the cold. Every sound in the forest seemed amplified. Another branch snap. To my left, then my right. Whatever it was big. And it was circling me. I drew my sidearm. Standard issue Glock 22. It felt small in my hand. Inadequate. The smell was stronger now. Overwhelming. My eyes were watering. Every instinct screamed danger. A low sound rumbled through the trees. Not quite a growl, deeper, more like thunder, but contained, controlled, intentional. I started backing away, slow steps, keeping my light moving, scanning the darkness. Movement, a shadow against shadows. Huge, at least 9 feet tall, broad. The light caught it for just a second. Dark fur, massive shoulders. Then it was gone. but I saw its eyes, just for a moment. They reflected my flashlight. Two yellow-red dots in the darkness, intelligent, aware. I ran. No shame in admitting it. 20 years of training and experience meant nothing in that moment. I ran. Branches whipped my face. I stumbled over roots. My boots slipped on wet leaves. But I kept running. Behind me, something crashed through the forest. Fast. Heavy footfalls. Breaking branches, getting closer. I hit the creek trail. Gravel crunched under my feet. The sound behind me stopped. I reached my truck. My hands shook so bad I dropped the keys. Had to feel around in the gravel to find them. Finally got the door open. Started the engine. The headlights cut through the fog. There was nothing in their beams, just empty forest. But I felt it watching, knew it was there. I drove back to the station, sat in my truck for a long time. My uniform was soaked with sweat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I filled out my patrol report, wrote everything down, every detail, measurements, times, directions, everything I could remember. The report sits in a file now. Official incident number 2023-1042, classified as possible large predator encounter. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I smelled. The next day, I went back, in daylight, with backup. We found the prints, took photos, made casts. They're in the file too. The broken branches were there, 8 feet up, snapped clean. The lab report said it would take over 1,000 pounds of force to do that. We found hair samples, sent them for testing. The results came back inconclusive, not matching any known species. I still patrol that area, have to. It's my job. But I don't do it alone anymore, not at night. Sometimes when I'm driving past Cedar Creek, I catch that smell again, that wild, musky odor. And sometimes late at night, I hear those sounds, that deep, rumbling, not quite growl. I've been a ranger for 15 years. I know these forests, know what lives in them, or thought I did. That night showed me I was wrong. There are things in these woods we don't understand, things that don't fit in our neat categories and scientific classifications. I don't tell this story much. When I do, I stick to the facts, what I saw, what I heard, what I smelled, the prints, the broken branches, the physical evidence. I let others draw their own conclusions, but I know what was in those woods that night, what walked on 2 legs and left 45-centimeter prints in the mud, what broke branches 8 feet up and moved through the forest like a shadow. I know, and I know it's still out there. The incident report sits in our files, photos, measurements, lab results, all very official, very scientific, but it doesn't capture everything, doesn't capture that moment when my light caught those eyes, doesn't capture the intelligence I saw there, the awareness. We have a name for it, a silly name, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, makes it sound like a cartoon, a legend, a campfire story, but I was there, I saw it, and there was nothing cartoonish about those eyes in the darkness, nothing legendary about that deep rumble that shook my bones. It was real as the mud on my boots, as real as the broken branches and the prints in the creek bank. I still carry my Glock on patrol, still wear my ranger badge, still do my job. But I know something now that I didn't know before. These forests hold secrets, big secrets, and sometimes, on dark nights when the fog rolls in, those secrets leave footprints in the mud. That's my story. Those are the facts, as I experienced them. Make of them what you will. But if you're ever hiking near Cedar Creek on a foggy night, and you smell something musky and wild, and hear branches breaking in the darkness, don't stop to investigate. Run. Story 3. The photos are still on my memory card. 3 frames. Something large moving behind the trees. The police have copies now. The university research team has copies. I've looked at them 1,000 times. They show something that shouldn't exist. But I was there. I took those photos. I know what I saw. I'm Yuki Tanaka, wildlife photographer. 20 years of experience, specialized in dawn and dusk wildlife behavior. I've photographed bears in Hokkaido, tigers in India, wolves in Alaska. I know how to move in the wild. I know how to stay safe. I know what animals look like in low light. This was different. It happened in the Cascade Mountains, September 15th, 2023. I was shooting a series on early morning wildlife behavior. My location was a small clearing 2 miles off Forest Service Road, 1927. GPS coordinates logged on my camera: 46 dig 12 33.1 N, 1 to 21 dig 31 44.8 W. Elevation 3,150 feet. My equipment that morning: Canon R5 mirrorless camera, RF 100 500mm f4.5 7.1 lens, tripod, remote trigger, GPS logger, emergency satellite phone, bear spray, basic survival gear. I arrived at 4:15 a.m. dark, temperature 45 degrees. Light breeze from the southwest. No moon, clear sky, stars visible through the canopy. I wore thermal underwear, fleece jacket, Gore-Tex outer shell, waterproof hiking boots, black watch cap. The clearing was about 30 yards wide, surrounded by old-growth Douglas firs and western red cedars, some trees over 200 feet tall, dense understory of ferns and salal. Perfect spot for dawn wildlife photos. I set up near the eastern edge, back against a big cedar, clear view west across the clearing, camera on tripod, lens pre-focused on the far tree line, ISO set to 2800 for the darkness, aperture at f4.5, ready for anything that might move in the pre-dawn light. The first 2 hours were normal. Heard an owl, saw some bats. A deer moved through at 5:30 a.m. Took a few test shots, checked my settings, waited for dawn. First light came at 6:12 a.m. Sky starting to lighten. Birds beginning to wake up. Normal forest sounds. Then everything went quiet. No bird calls, no squirrels, no wind in the trees. Just sudden, complete silence. My neck tingled. Palms got sweaty on the camera grip. 20 years of experience tells you when something's wrong. When the forest goes quiet, something's coming. A sound came from the western tree line. Deep, guttural. Not a bear, not a cougar, not like anything I'd heard before. It echoed across the clearing, made my chest vibrate. I started shooting, 3 frames per second, continuous autofocus. The sound came again, closer, movement in the trees, something big. Frame 1, 6:17 a.m., dark shape behind a Douglas fir, taller than the lowest branches. Those branches were 12 feet up. I know because I measured later. Frame 2, 6:17 a.m., shape moving left, bipedal, clear shoulder line, head visible above the branches, dark fur or hair visible where dawn light caught it. Frame 3, 6:17 a.m., full figure partially visible between 2 trees, height reference against known tree sizes, approximately 8 feet tall, broad shoulders, long arms, clear bipedal stance. My hands shook on the camera, sweat ran down my back despite the cold. The smell hit me then, strong, musty, like wet fur but worse, much worse. The figure stopped, head turned toward me, eyes reflected red in the pre-dawn light. Not like normal animal eye shine. Different, more like human eyes catching light, but larger, much larger. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Finger frozen on the shutter button. The camera stopped firing, buffer full. The figure just stood there, watching me. Time stretched. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes. My legs cramped from staying still. Sweat soaked my base layer, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The figure moved, 1 step forward, smooth motion, deliberate. Not like an animal, more like a person, but huge, massive. Its head nearly touched the branches 12 feet up. Another step. I saw its hand grip a tree trunk, fingers closed around it. Big fingers, long fingers, not claws, not paws. Fingers. A sound came from it. Low at first, building to something between a growl and speech. It vibrated through my bones, made my teeth hurt, lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then it turned, moved back into the forest. 3 long strides and it vanished in the shadows. The sound stopped. The smell lingered. I sat there for an hour. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. Just sat and watched the tree line. The sun came up. Birds started singing again. Normal forest sounds returned. When I could move again, I checked my camera. 3 frames. Still there. Not a dream. Not imagination. Real images of something impossible. I walked to where it had stood, found clear tracks in the soft ground, length 17 inches, width at ball of foot, 7.5 inches, width at heel, 5.5 inches, depth 2.5 inches in soft soil, clear dermal ridges visible, 5 toes, human-like arrangement, stride length, 6.5 feet between prints. Found more evidence, dark hairs caught in bark, 8 feet up, broken branches showing fresh breaks, scraped bark where it gripped the tree. Strong odor lingering in the area. I photographed everything, used my lens cap for scale, shot raw format, no editing, no manipulation, pure documentation. GPS logger confirmed location, timestamps on photos matched my memory, everything recorded, everything documented, everything real. I called the Forest Service from my satellite phone. They sent rangers. More documentation, official photos of tracks, plaster casts, hair samples collected, bark samples with trace evidence, measurements of breaks in branches, environmental readings, witness statement, my account. The lab results came 2 weeks later. Hair samples, unknown primate species, dermal ridges in tracks, confirmed primate characteristics, height estimate from evidence 8'2" to 8'4", weight estimate from track depth 750–800 pounds, DNA analysis inconclusive. I've been back to that clearing several times. Different camera setup now, multiple bodies, various lenses, motion sensors, infrared capability, time-lapse setup. Haven't seen it again. But sometimes, just before dawn, the forest goes quiet. The birds stop singing. The air gets heavy, and I smell that smell. Just for a moment. Just long enough to know it's still out there. The facts remain. Date, September 15th, 2023. Time, 6:17 a.m. Location, Cascade Mountains. Documented by GPS physical evidence, tracks, hair samples, damaged vegetation, photographic evidence, 3 frames showing clear figure, multiple confirmations of evidence by authorities, laboratory analysis showing unknown primate characteristics. That's what happened. Every detail exactly as it occurred. No embellishment, no interpretation, just the facts. I still work as a wildlife photographer, still go out at dawn, still track and photograph animals, but now I carry extra memory cards, keep my camera buffer clear, stay ready, because I know it's out there, not a legend, not a myth, real, physical, documented by my camera, confirmed by evidence, something that shouldn't exist, but does. Those 3 frames are still on my memory card, still clear, still real, still showing something science says is impossible. But I was there. I took those photos. I know what I saw. That's my story. Every word true, every detail accurate, every fact documented. Take it for what it is, the direct testimony of a professional observer with 20 years of experience. Nothing more, nothing less, just the truth. Story 4. My camera doesn't lie. That's what I keep telling myself when I look at the photos from that night. I'm Ingrid Bjornstad, wildlife photographer. I've spent 20 years capturing images of animals in their natural habitats. But what happened in the Cascade Mountains last September wasn't in any wildlife guide I've ever read. I'd been tracking a herd of Roosevelt elk for 3 days. My plan was simple: camp near their migration route and catch them at dawn when they moved through the valley. I'd done it 100 times before with different animals. Set up camp, wait, document, basic wildlife photography. The weather was perfect that evening. Clear sky, no wind, temperature around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I pitched my tent in a small clearing backed by large cedars. Good sight lines to the valley below. Perfect spot for dawn shots. I set up my equipment. Canon EOS R5, 600mm telephoto lens, tripod, motion sensors, memory cards. Everything checked and double-checked. Standard procedure. I ate a quick meal of trail mix and dried fruit. Filled my water bottle from the stream. Normal routine. The sun set at 7:42 p.m. I remember checking my watch. Noted it in my shoot log. Always keep detailed records. Part of the job. I got into my sleeping bag around 9 p.m. The forest was quiet. Just the usual nighttime sounds. Crickets. An occasional owl. A light breeze in the trees. The first unusual thing I noticed was the silence. Complete silence. No crickets. No owls. No wind. Nothing. I checked my watch. 11:27 p.m. Then I heard it. Twigs snapping. Not small twigs. Big ones. The sound was close. Maybe 20 feet from my tent. More snaps. Slower now. Deliberate. Whatever was out there was big. And it was moving carefully. My heart started pounding. My hands got sweaty. I reached for my flashlight but stopped. Years of wildlife photography taught me one thing. Sometimes it's better not to look. The footsteps came closer, heavy, spaced far apart. The ground vibrated slightly with each step. Something brushed against my tent. Not a branch. Something solid. Something massive. I lay completely still, barely breathing. The nylon wall of my tent bulged inward. A shadow fell across it, huge, upright. The shadow didn't move, just stood there. I could hear breathing, deep, regular breaths, not like a bear, not like anything I'd heard before. My camera was right next to me. The shutter was silent on the R5. I could take a photo without making a sound, but my hands were shaking too much. A smell filtered through the tent fabric. Strong, musky, like wet fur but different, distinct, unlike any animal I'd encountered. The shadow shifted. The thing outside moved, slowly, deliberately. It circled my tent. I heard sniffing, long, deep inhalations. It was smelling me, learning my scent. More footsteps, heavy but careful. It moved to the other side of the clearing. I could still hear its breathing. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time gets strange when you're afraid. My watch said 12:15 a.m. Only 48 minutes had passed. The breathing stopped. One last heavy footstep. Then nothing. I waited. Counted my own heartbeats. 500 of them. Still nothing. At 1:30 a.m., I finally moved. Just enough to reach my camera. Took 3 shots through the tent wall. The flash was off. Just high ISO night shots. I didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Just lay there, listening. The forest stayed silent. Dawn came at 6:17 a.m. I wrote that in my log too. Funny how you cling to normal routines. I waited until full light before unzipping the tent. My hands were still shaking. The clearing looked different. Branches were broken on the surrounding trees, high up, 8, maybe 9 feet off the ground. There were footprints, deep ones. The soil was hard, but something heavy had left clear impressions. I put my boot next to one for scale in a photo. My size 8 boot looked tiny beside it. I found more evidence. Tufts of dark hair caught in the bark of trees. I collected samples in Ziploc bags. Always carry specimen bags. Another professional habit. The ground showed a clear path where it had walked. Flattened grass, broken twigs, all in a straight line, bipedal, walking on 2 legs. I took photos of everything, wide shots, close-ups, used a ruler for scale, documented it all like any other wildlife encounter. Then I checked my camera, the 3 night shots. 2 were just darkness. The third showed something, a shape, massive, upright, dense fur visible even in the low light. The image is grainy. High ISO will do that, but it's clear enough. I packed up my camp, fast, efficiently. Everything back in my backpack in under 10 minutes. A new record. The hike back to my car took 3 hours. I kept stopping to look back, kept thinking I heard footsteps, heavy footsteps. I drove straight to the University of Washington, found Dr. Marcus at the biology department. He's helped me identify species before. He looked at my photos, studied the hair samples, measured the plaster casts I'd made of the footprints. His face got very serious. The hair samples went to a lab. The results were strange. Primate hair, they said, but not matching any known species. The footprint casts showed clear dermal ridges, like fingerprints for feet. The pattern didn't match any known animal. The night photo went to a digital forensics expert. No manipulation found. The image was genuine. Whatever I photographed was really there. I've sent the evidence to other experts, anthropologists, zoologists, primatologists. They all say the same thing, interesting but inconclusive. But I was there. I heard it breathe, smelled its scent, saw its shadow, felt its presence. The scientific part of my brain tries to rationalize it, looks for explanations, known species, normal wildlife behavior. But there's nothing normal about a 9-foot-tall bipedal creature moving through the forest at night. Nothing normal about that smell, those footprints, that deliberate, intelligent behavior. I've gone back to that clearing several times, always in daylight, always with a partner now. The broken branches are still there, the tracks have weathered away, but that path through the forest remains, like a scar in the landscape. I've set up camera traps in the area, motion sensors, infrared triggers, all the latest technology. Sometimes the cameras catch something, usually at night, usually just a shadow, a blur of movement. But sometimes, there's one image, captured at 2:47 a.m. last week. Same location, same type of encounter. The subject is partially hidden by trees, but you can see its eyes, reflecting the infrared light, looking directly at the camera. Those eyes, they know they're being watched. They understand what the camera is, what it does. That's what haunts me the most. Not the size, not the strength it must have to break those branches, not even its ability to move so quietly despite its mass. It's the intelligence in those eyes, the awareness, the deliberate way it stays just out of clear view. My cameras are still out there, still watching, still waiting. Sometimes, when I check the memory cards, all the cameras have been turned to face the trees, turned carefully, deliberately, without damaging them. Something out there understands what I'm doing, and it's choosing what I'm allowed to see. I'm a wildlife photographer. I deal in evidence, in documented fact, in clear, well-lit images of known species. But those eyes in the night photos, they're looking back, studying me just as I'm studying them. And sometimes on quiet nights, I think about what that means, about what's really out there in the dark spaces between the trees. My camera doesn't lie, but maybe it's not telling the whole truth either. Maybe some things don't want to be photographed, don't want to be studied or classified or understood. Maybe they're studying us instead. Story 5. Science deals in facts, data, measurable evidence. After 20 years as a field geologist, I trust what I can measure, document, and verify. What I found on Mount Baker that day defied everything I thought I knew. The evidence is documented. The measurements are precise. The implications are impossible. My name is Klaus Weber, PhD in geology from ETH Zurich, currently working as a research geologist studying volcanic deposits in the Cascade Range. The events I'm about to describe occurred during a routine field survey on Mount Baker's eastern slope. Date, August 3, 2023. Field conditions that morning. Location, 48°47'15", 2, N, 121°42, 33.8. Elevation, 4,850 feet. Temperature, 52 degrees. Weather, Clear, light wind from northwest ground conditions, damp from previous day's rain. Time, 8:15 a.m. Start standard equipment load. Geological hammer GPS unit, field notebook, digital calipers, scale, bar sample bags, camera, measuring tape, topographic maps, emergency gear. I was mapping a series of lahars, volcanic mudflow deposits. Standard procedure: take measurements, collect samples, document stratigraphy, normal scientific work. The first tracks appeared at 9:20 a.m. Clear impressions in a muddy section between two lahar deposits. Fresh. The mud hadn't started to dry. They weren't there the previous evening when I'd scouted the area. Initial measurements: length 45.7 centimeters width at ball, 20.3 centimeters width at heel, 14.2 centimeters, depth 5.8 centimeters, stride length 1.8 meters, step width 45.7 centimeters. My hands shook taking the measurements, not from cold, from adrenaline. 20 years of fieldwork. I'd seen every kind of animal track possible in these mountains. These were different. The tracks showed clear anatomical features. 5 distinct toes, arch structure like a human foot, heel strike pattern, push-off impressions, dermal ridge patterns, clear bipedal gait. I took photos, used my scale bar, shot from multiple angles, documented everything according to standard field protocols. The evidence had to be perfect, had to be unimpeachable. The trackway continued for 47 meters, 38 clear prints, each one identical in shape, each one showing the same impossible size, each one clearly fresh. My mouth went dry. Sweat soaked my shirt despite the cool morning. These tracks were made by something that walked on 2 legs, something huge, something that shouldn't exist. I followed the trackway. Standard scientific procedure. Document the extent, map the pattern, collect the data. My GPS unit marked every print. My camera recorded every detail. The stride length told a story. Consistent 1.8 meter spacing. Regular alternation, left, right. Straight line of travel. No signs of limping or irregularity. Clear heel-toe walking gait. Normal walking speed based on stride. The creature's height could be calculated from the tracks. 45.7 cm foot length. Standard anatomical ratios. Bipedal stance evident from gait. Estimated height 2.4 to 2.5 meters. Estimated weight from impression depth 350-400 kilograms. At print number 23, I found the first hair sample. Dark, coarse, about 15 centimeters long, stuck in a tree bark at shoulder height for the calculated creature size. I bagged it, tagged it, logged the GPS coordinates. The smell hit me at print number 27. Strong, pungent, like wet fur but sharper, more chemical. My eyes watered, my nose burned. The odor hung in the still morning air. Then I heard the sound, deep, resonant, not a bear, not a cougar, not like anything I'd heard in 20 years of field work. It came from the tree line about 100 meters ahead. My hands gripped my geology hammer, useless against something that could make those tracks. My heart pounded. Sweat ran down my back. The sound came again, closer, movement in the trees, something large, something dark. The branches shook about 2.5 meters up, exactly the calculated height from the tracks. I stood perfectly still. Field training kicks in. Don't run from predators. Don't make sudden moves. Stay calm. Stay quiet. Document everything. The figure emerged. Dark. Massive. Exactly 2.5 meters tall based on the trees it passed. Broad shoulders, long arms, covered in dark hair or fur, walking upright, perfectly upright, like a person. It moved with purpose. Each step smooth, deliberate. The stride matched the tracks exactly, 1.8 meters. The gait was human-like but longer, more powerful. I raised my camera, hands shaking, managed 3 photos before it turned its head. Eyes caught the morning light, brown, intelligent, aware. Not animal eyes, not human eyes. Something else. A sound came from it, low at first. building to something between a growl and speech, structured, patterned. It lasted 15 seconds. I know because I checked my camera's timestamps later. Then it turned. 3 strides took it back into the forest. The branches shook at exactly 2.5 meters height. The sound stopped. The smell lingered. I stood there for 30 minutes, couldn't move, could barely breathe. My legs shook, my hands trembled. But my scientific training held. I had to document everything. Final documentation, 38 clear tracks, 3 hair samples collected, 17 photographs with scale GPS coordinates for every print, full measurements of entire trackway, environmental readings, time-stamped photos of the creature, audio recording of the sound on camera. Lab results came 3 weeks later. Hair samples, unknown primate species, DNA analysis, inconclusive dermal ridge patterns, primate characteristics, soil compression analysis confirms weight estimate, audio analysis shows structured patterns in vocalization, photo analysis confirms height calculations. The facts stand. Date, August 3rd, 2023. Location, Mount Baker, verified by GPS, physical evidence, tracks, hair samples, photos, multiple measurements and documentation, laboratory confirmation of unknown primate characteristics, all evidence collected using standard scientific protocols. I've gone back to that site 12 times. Different weather, different seasons, looking for more evidence. The original trackway has weathered away. But I've found 4 more hair samples, 2 more sets of tracks, the same smell 3 times. The science is clear. Something bipedal made those tracks. Something 2.5 meters tall. Something weighing 350–400 kilograms. Something with primate characteristics. Something that shouldn't exist. But it does exist. I saw it. I measured it. I documented it. The evidence is clear. The data is solid. The calculations are correct. I'm a scientist. I deal in facts. In measurable, verifiable evidence. What I found that day on Mount Baker is a fact. The tracks are real. The measurements are precise. The photographs are clear. That's what happened. Every detail exactly as it occurred. Every measurement precise. Every observation documented. Take it as scientific data. Nothing more, nothing less. Just the facts as recorded by standardized geological field protocols. The evidence is still in my field notes, still on my camera, still in sealed sample bags, real, physical, documented, something that science says is impossible. But I was there. I measured it. I documented it. I know what I found. Story 6. I'm Dr. Kazuo Tanaka. I hold a PhD in mycology from the University of Washington. I've spent the last 20 years studying fungal species in the Pacific Northwest. What I encountered during my field research last spring wasn't in any scientific literature I've ever read. April 15th, 2023. I was conducting a survey of rare mushroom species in the Olympic National Forest. The winter had been unusually wet. Perfect conditions for fungal growth. The soil temperature was 54 degrees Celsius, humidity at 82%. I recorded everything in my field journal. I'd started at dawn. My equipment was standard. Collection bags, specimen containers, GPS unit, field microscope, digital camera, soil testing kit. My backpack weighed 22 pounds. I always weigh my gear. Helps track sample weight. The location was promising. North-facing slope, old-growth forest, dense canopy, lots of fallen logs in various stages of decay. Ideal mushroom habitat. By 2 p.m., I'd collected 16 specimens. 3 were potentially new species. I marked their locations on my GPS, took soil samples, photographed the surrounding vegetation. Standard protocol. The weather changed around 3:30 p.m. Cloud cover increased. Temperature dropped to 48 degrees. Light rain started. I made a note to check local weather patterns later. I found an interesting specimen at 4:15 p.m. Possible new Cortinarius species, purple cap, unusual growth pattern. I knelt down to take samples. That's when I heard it. A deep sound, not quite a growl. Lower, more resonant. It came from the slope above me. I looked up, nothing visible through the trees. The sound came again, longer this time. It seemed to vibrate in my chest. My hands started shaking. I dropped my sample container. Spores scattered on the wet ground. Movement caught my eye. Something large, moving between the trees. The rain made it hard to see clearly. I reached for my camera, pressed record. The autofocus struggled in the low light. The figure stepped partially into view. Massive, bipedal, at least 2.5 meters tall. Dark fur matted from the rain. My camera beeped. Low battery. The sound echoed in the quiet forest. The figure turned. Fast. Faster than something that size should move. I saw its face. Just for a moment. Not human. Not ape. Something else. The eyes were what struck me. Alert. Focused. Aware. It disappeared into the vegetation. No crashing. No broken branches. Just gone. Silent. The smell hit me then. Strong. Musky. Like wet fur, but different. Distinct. My sinuses burned. I stood very still. Counted my heartbeats. 147 per minute. Well above my normal 68. The smell lingered. The rain kept falling. Small drops hitting leaves. Nothing else moved. I waited 15 minutes. Checked my watch repeatedly. The forest remained quiet. Finally, I moved. My legs were stiff from standing still. My clothes were soaked. I found tracks in the mud, large, bipedal. I placed my field journal next to one for scale. The print was 42 centimeters long. The stride length was impressive, 1.8 meters between prints. A clear walking pattern, heel to toe, like human prints but much larger. I took photos, used my GPS unit for location data, measured depth, width, length, documented everything. The prints led upslope. I followed. Not the smartest decision, but scientific curiosity overrode caution. The trail was clear. Broken twigs, bent branches, flattened vegetation, all at a height of about 2.5 meters. The smell got stronger as I climbed. My eyes watered. My throat felt tight. I found more evidence. Dark hairs caught on bark. I collected samples in sterile containers, measured their length, 15 centimeters average. The trail ended at a rock face. A small cave entrance was visible. The smell was overwhelming here. Inside the cave, I found more signs, scratches on the walls, high up, deep grooves in solid rock. The cave floor showed signs of regular use, compressed soil, organic debris. I took soil samples, noted the temperature, 52 degrees. Something caught my eye in the debris, something artificial. I picked it up carefully. It was a camera, old model, digital. The case was crushed, like it had been squeezed by something very strong. The memory card was intact. I pocketed it, would check it later. The sound came again, that deep, resonant call, close, very close. I left, fast, didn't run, walked quickly, kept checking over my shoulder. The smell followed me. The sound echoed through the trees twice more, each time from a different direction. I reached my car at 6:45 p.m. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. I sat there for 10 minutes, just breathing. The drive back to Seattle took 3 hours. I kept checking my rearview mirror. In my lab, I examined the evidence. The hair samples were unusual, primate characteristics, but not matching known species. The soil samples showed high concentrations of unusual compounds, organic, complex molecules I couldn't identify. The memory card from the camera worked. Most files were corrupted, but 3 photos were readable. The last photo was time-stamped 2 years ago. It showed the same thing I'd seen, same height, same build, same intelligent eyes. I sent samples to colleagues, hair to a geneticist, soil to a biochemist, photos to a digital forensics expert. The results were fascinating and troubling. The hair showed unknown primate DNA markers. The soil contained unique pheromone compounds. The photos were genuine, unaltered. I've been back to the site 6 times, always during daylight, always with a partner now. The prints are still there, fossilized in the hard mud. The cave shows signs of continued use. I've set up research equipment, motion sensors, temperature loggers, air sampling devices. The equipment keeps malfunctioning, batteries drain, data corrupts. But sometimes, before it fails, it records something. Low-frequency sounds below human hearing range, complex vocalizations with linguistic patterns, temperature changes that don't match environmental conditions. The scientific part of my brain tries to categorize it, classify it, put it into known frameworks, but this doesn't fit. The size, the intelligence, the deliberate way it stays hidden. I'm a mycologist. I study fungi, simple organisms with complex behaviors. This is far beyond my expertise, but I keep going back, keep collecting data, keep trying to understand. The smell is always there now. Every time I visit the site, that distinctive musk that makes my sinuses burn. Sometimes I find my equipment moved, carefully, precisely. The sensors turned away from certain areas, the cameras facing the wrong direction. Something out there understands what these devices do, and it's choosing what data I can collect. I've written papers on my findings, submitted them to peer-reviewed journals. They all get rejected. Insufficient evidence. Methodology concerns. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. But I know what I saw, what I smelled, what I documented. There's something in those woods, something that walks on 2 legs and leaves 42-centimeter footprints, something that understands cameras and sensors, something that wants to remain unknown. My field notes tell the story. Dates, times, measurements, data, facts. The evidence is there, in the prints, in the hair samples, in the corrupted data files. Something intelligent lives in those woods, something that's studying us just as we're trying to study it. And sometimes when I'm reviewing my data late at night, I wonder who's really doing the research here. Story 7. Plant collection requires patience, careful observation, attention to detail. 15 years of fieldwork taught me to notice everything in my environment. That night in the Olympic National Forest, my training kept me alive. Something visited my camp, something that watched, something that thought. My name is May Wong, PhD in botany from UC Berkeley, specialty in rare Pacific Northwest flora. I was on a solo research trip collecting specimens of Darlingtonia californica, a rare carnivorous plant. Date, July 17, 2023. Camp location details. Coordinates, 47 to 51, 22, 4N, 123 to 56, 18.7 W. Elevation, 2,050 feet. Habitat, old-growth forest. Weather, clear, mild temperature, 58 degrees at sunset moon. Phase, quarter moon. Standard field gear, 1-person tent, green ripstop nylon. Sleeping bag rated to 30 degrees Celsius, plant press and collection materials, field notebook, camera, GPS unit, emergency satellite phone, basic survival gear, 5 days of provisions. I set up camp at 4:30 p.m. Standard procedure, clear, level ground, back against rock face, clear sight lines, close to water source, bare hang for food, emergency gear accessible. The first day went normally. Found 3 specimen populations, documented locations, collected samples, made field notes, standard research work. Sunset came at 8:47 p.m. I secured my specimens, hung my food bag, made camp notes, everything by protocol, everything normal. The first sign came at 11:22 p.m. A change in the forest sounds, not sudden silence, gradual quieting, like someone turning down volume, first the birds, then the insects, then everything. My neck tensed, skin prickled. Training kicks in during strange situations. Stay calm, document everything, record all details. The smell came next, strong, musky, not bear, not cougar, not elk, something else. It filled my tent in seconds, made my eyes water, made my throat tight. Movement outside. Heavy footsteps. Bipedal footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling my camp. Distance about 20 meters based on sound. I lay perfectly still, controlled my breathing, kept my eyes closed, counted the footsteps, documented mentally. Stride length, approximately 2 meters, based on timing. Gait, smooth, consistent weight, heavy from ground vibration. Pattern, systematic circling. The steps stopped. Silence, complete silence. Even my heartbeat seemed loud. Sweat soaked my sleeping bag. My hands gripped the satellite phone. A shadow fell across my tent. Huge shadow. Height calculation based on quarter moon position, approximately 2.5 meters tall. Width at shoulders, approximately 1.2 meters. The shadow moved. Smooth motion, deliberate motion, intelligent motion, not random animal movement, purposeful observation. My chest tightened, breathing became shallow, eyes stayed fixed on the shadow. Mind recorded every detail, clear bipedal stance, arms longer than human proportion, head directly on shoulders, minimal neck, massive bulk in torso area. The figure crouched, shadow changed shape, still huge, still deliberate. A hand reached toward the tent. Massive hand, 5 fingers clearly visible in shadow. Not claws, not paws, fingers. The hand stopped short of touching the tent wall. Hovered there, examining, thinking. The shadow showed finger movement, deliberate gestures, like someone studying something interesting. A sound came then. Low, rumbling. Pattern to it. Duration, 12 seconds. Frequency, low register structure. Repeated elements. Volume, moderate but powerful. The vibration went through my chest, made my teeth buzz. The tent material rippled from the sound waves. The hand withdrew. The shadow moved back. The footsteps started again, still circling. Different pattern now, smaller radius, approximately 10 meters. Slower pace, more careful placement, regular stops for observation. This continued for 45 minutes. I know because I checked my watch, kept mental notes. Documented everything I could perceive. Temperature drop of approximately 5 degrees. Continued strong odor. Regular sound patterns, consistent movement patterns. At 12:38 a.m., the pattern changed. The circles got wider, the footsteps more distant, the smell gradually faded. The forest remained silent. I waited 2 hours, perfectly still, recording mentally, no further footsteps, no further sounds, gradual return of forest noise, dissipation of odor. Dawn came at 5:15 a.m. I waited until full light, emerged from tent, documented everything, physical evidence, tracks in soft soil, length 43.2 centimeters, width at ball, 19.8 centimeters, width at heel, 14.0 centimeters, depth 4.5 centimeters, clear 5-toe pattern, obvious arch structure, dermal ridge impressions, circle pattern in vegetation, flattened grass in concentric rings, regular spacing of tracks, consistent stride length, clear entry and exit paths, hair samples, 3 dark specimens found, length 15 to 18 centimeters, coarse texture, dark brown coloration, trace evidence, broken twigs at 2.5 meter height, bark scrapes on trees, crushed vegetation showing path, lingering odor in specific areas. I photographed everything, all tracks with scale bar hair samples in situ, vegetation patterns, height references on trees, full camp layout, entry and exit paths, measurements taken, all track dimensions, stride lengths, circle diameters, height references, distance markers, temperature readings, GPS coordinates. Called ranger station at 7 a.m. They sent a team. More documentation, official photographs, plaster casts of prints, hair sample collection, soil samples, environmental readings, my witness statement. Lab results arrived 3 weeks later. Hair analysis, unknown primate species, track analysis, consistent with great ape characteristics, DNA testing, inconclusive but primate markers present, soil compression studies confirm weight estimate, 340-380 kilos. The facts remain. Date, July 17, 2023. Location, Olympic National Forest, GPS verified. Duration, 11:22 p.m. to approximately 12:38 a.m. Physical evidence documented, multiple confirmations of evidence laboratory analysis showing unknown primate characteristics. I still do fieldwork, still collect specimens, still camp alone. But my protocols have changed. Multiple game cameras, motion sensors, audio recording equipment, better documentation tools. That's what happened. Every detail exactly as it occurred, every measurement precise, every observation accurate. Take it as scientific data, nothing more, nothing less. The evidence is still in my field notes, still in sealed sample bags, still in official reports. Real, physical, documented. Something that shouldn't exist but does. I'm a scientist. I work with facts, with verifiable evidence, with precise documentation. What happened that night is documented fact. The evidence is clear. The measurements are accurate. The analysis is confirmed. That's my report. Every word true. Every detail accurate. Every fact documented. Just the truth, as recorded by standard scientific protocols. Story 8. My name is Dmitry Volkov. I've been hunting in the Idaho wilderness for 30 years. What happened that autumn morning changed everything I knew about these mountains. The day started at 4 a.m. Temperature was 28 degrees. Light snow had fallen overnight. Perfect tracking conditions. I checked my gear before leaving camp. Remington 700, spare ammunition, hunting knife, emergency kit. Standard equipment. I'd set up my deer trap the previous evening. Simple design. Steel cage with a pressure plate. Humane and legal. I'd done it hundreds of times before. The trap was a mile from camp. Uphill. Through dense forest. My boots crunched in the fresh snow. The air was sharp in my lungs. First light came at 6:17 a.m. Grey sky. Low clouds. More snow threatening. I marked the weather in my hunting log. Always keep records. I smelled it before I saw it. A strong, musky odor. Not deer, not bear. Something else. Something I'd never smelled before. The trap came into view at 6:45 a.m. I stopped. My hand tightened on my rifle. The steel cage was destroyed. Not triggered, not sprung. Destroyed. The metal bars were bent outward, twisted like paper clips. I approached slowly. 20 years of hunting experience told me something was wrong. Very wrong. The snow around the trap was disturbed. Large footprints. Bipedal. Walking on two legs. I put my boot next to one for comparison. My size 11 looked small beside it. The prints were fresh. The edges still sharp in the snow. Less than an hour old. I found marks on the metal. Deep impressions. Like fingerprints but larger. Much larger. Something had gripped the steel bars and pulled them apart. The metal was half-inch thick, industrial grade. It would take thousands of pounds of force to do that. A sound echoed through the trees. A series of knocks, wood on wood, rhythmic, deliberate. I raised my rifle, scanned the forest. Nothing moved. The knocking came again, from a different direction. Then another, and another. I was surrounded. My heart rate spiked. Sweat froze on my forehead. The rifle felt heavy in my hands. Movement caught my eye. Something large, moving between the trees. Fast, too fast for its size. I saw it clearly for just a moment. Tall, 8, maybe 9 feet. Broad shoulders. Dark fur dusted with snow. It wasn't running away. It was circling, moving with purpose, intelligence. The knocking continued, different rhythms now, like a language, communication. I started backing away. Slow steps, rifle ready, every muscle tense. The smell got stronger. That musky odor filled my nose, made my eyes water. More movement, multiple figures, dark shapes in the trees, always just at the edge of clear vision. One stepped into a clearing, 30 yards away, full daylight now, no mistaking what I saw. It stood upright, perfectly balanced, arms longer than human proportion, muscles visible even through the thick fur. The head was large, set directly on powerful shoulders, no neck to speak of. The face. I've spent my life in these mountains, seen every animal that lives here. This was something else, something that didn't fit. The eyes were what got me. Dark, intelligent, aware. They locked onto mine. It made a sound, low, resonant. I felt it in my chest. The others answered, different tones, different pitches. I raised my rifle. The creature didn't move, just watched me. Those eyes. My finger was on the trigger. Safety off. Clean shot. It tilted its head, just slightly. A human gesture, an intelligent gesture. I lowered the rifle. The creature nodded, actually nodded, then turned and walked away, upright, bipedal. 9 feet of muscle and fur just walked away. The others followed. I caught glimpses through the trees, 5, maybe 6 of them. A group, a family. The knocking continued as they left. Different patterns, different rhythms. They were talking to each other. I stood there for a long time. My legs were shaking. Sweat had frozen on my back. Finally, I approached the trap again. Examined it closer. The metal wasn't just bent. It was twisted with precision. The bars were curved outward at specific points. This wasn't random destruction. Whatever did this understood how the trap worked. Understood it was meant to catch something, and deliberately disabled it. I found more prints, clear ones. The snow had preserved them perfectly. I took pictures, used my hunting knife for scale, measured depth, length, width, documented everything. The stride length was incredible, 6 feet between prints, a natural walking gait. The weight distribution was like a human print but massive. I collected snow samples where they'd walked, found dark hairs caught on tree bark, put everything in plastic bags. The knocking had stopped. The forest was quiet now, but that smell lingered, that musky, wild odor. I gathered the remains of my trap. The twisted metal was heavy. Each bar was bent at almost exactly the same angle. The walk back to camp felt longer. I kept stopping, looking back, listening. More snow started falling. Within hours, the prints would be gone, the evidence covered. But I had the pictures, the samples, the twisted metal of my trap. Back at camp, I packed up quickly, efficiently, everything in my truck in under 10 minutes. The drive home took 4 hours. I kept checking my mirrors. The rifle stayed on the seat beside me. I've been hunting these mountains for 3 decades. Thought I knew every animal, every track, every sign. I was wrong. The labs couldn't explain the hair samples. Unknown primate species, they said. The snow samples showed unusual protein markers. The metal from the trap went to an engineering lab. The force required to bend it that way was calculated at over 2,000 pounds. Applied with precision. I've shown the photos to experts, biologists, anthropologists, zoologists. They all say the same thing, interesting but inconclusive. But I was there. I saw it. Looked into those eyes. Intelligent eyes. Eyes that understood what my rifle was, what it could do. I still hunt. Have to. It's part of who I am. But I don't set traps anymore. Sometimes when I'm in the mountains, I hear that knocking, that rhythmic, deliberate sound. Sometimes I find tracks, large prints in mud or snow, always leading somewhere remote, somewhere humans don't go, and sometimes, just sometimes, I catch that smell, that distinctive musk that means something large is nearby, something intelligent. I've never told this story to the hunting clubs, never reported it officially. Who would believe it? But every word is true. Every detail is exact. There's something in these mountains, something that walks on 2 legs and bends steel bars like paper, something that communicates with wooden knocks and understands human weapons. The evidence sits in my garage, the twisted metal trap, the photos, the samples. Scientific proof, no. The experts would want more, would demand better evidence. But I know what I saw that morning, know what looked into my eyes and chose to walk away. There are things in these mountains we don't understand, things that understand us far better than we understand them. And sometimes, on cold mornings when fresh snow covers the ground, I think about those eyes, that intelligent gaze that knew exactly what my rifle was, and chose to let me live with that knowledge. Story 9. I've hunted these woods for 30 years. I know every sound, every smell, every movement pattern. When the forest goes silent, something's wrong. That day in Washington State, the silence told me I wasn't alone. I wasn't the hunter anymore. My name is Pierre Dubois, professional hunting guide, 2 decades leading expeditions in the Pacific Northwest. The incident happened during a solo scouting trip in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Date, October 8, 2023. Location details, coordinates 46 to 8, 7.3 N, 1 to 21, 49, 22.8. View elevation, 3,750 feet. Terrain, dense old-growth forest. Weather, overcast, light drizzle. Temperature, 48 degrees. Time, 2:30 p.m. Start standard gear, Remington 700 rifle, .308 caliber. Rangefinder binoculars GPS unit, satellite phone survival kit. Day pack with supplies, trail camera. I was checking a new area for the upcoming deer season. Standard procedure, check game trails, look for sign, map water sources, normal hunting work. The silence hit at 3:45 p.m., not gradual, sudden, complete. No birds, no squirrels, no wind in trees, nothing. Like someone flipped a switch. My muscles tensed automatically. 30 years of instinct kicked in. Something was wrong, very wrong. The forest never goes silent without reason. The smell came first, sharp, musky, like wet fur but stronger. Different from bear, different from anything I'd smelled in 3 decades of hunting. My hands tightened on the rifle, safety off, eyes scanning, ears straining, every sense alert. The smell got stronger. Movement caught my eye. 100 yards north, between 2 massive Douglas firs. Something big, something moving upright. I raised my binoculars, hands steady from years of practice, focused on the movement. The figure stood at least 8 feet tall, broad shoulders, long arms, dark fur or hair. Details burned into my memory. Height, approximately 8 feet, compared to marked trees. Build, massive upper body. Movement, smooth, bipedal color. Dark brown to black hair, thick, matted in places. Posture, fully upright, natural stance. It moved with purpose, each step deliberate. Not like a bear on hind legs, not like anything I'd seen in 30 years of hunting. The trees around it showed scale. Douglas fir diameter, 5 feet, measured later. Lowest branches, 12 feet up, figure reached to 8.5 feet. Shoulder width, approximately 4 feet. My heart pounded against my ribs. Sweat ran down my back despite the cold. The rifle felt useless in my hands. The creature stopped, turned its head. Eyes caught what little light filtered through the canopy. Not animal eyes, not human eyes. Intelligent eyes, aware eyes. It reached up, grabbed a branch, pulled. The branch was 4 inches thick. It snapped like kindling. The sound echoed through the silence. I documented mentally. Professional habits die hard. Time, 3:52. PM distance, 100 yards wind. From target to me. Visibility, clear. Despite overcast sound, sharp crack, no other forest noise. The figure moved again, deliberate steps, each footfall placed carefully, like it was examining the ground, looking for something. It found what it was looking for, bent down, picked something up, a broken branch, examined it, turned it over, studied it. The intelligence in the movement froze my blood. This wasn't animal behavior. This was purposeful, thoughtful, calculated. Then it started marking trees, breaking branches at consistent heights, placing broken pieces in specific patterns, creating clear trail markers, systematic movement between marks. I raise my camera, hands shaking now. Managed 3 photos before it turned toward me, the eyes locked on my position. No doubt, no hesitation. It knew exactly where I was, had probably known the whole time. A sound came from it, deep, resonant, pattern to it, duration, 15 seconds, tone, low, powerful structure, repeated elements, volume, made my chest vibrate. The sound wasn't a warning, wasn't a threat, had structure, had meaning, like speech but not speech. It moved toward me, smooth strides, covering ground fast, each step measured, stride length, approximately 6 feet, speed, fast walk for it, running pace for human gait, natural comfortable movement, fluid, controlled. My legs wouldn't move, hands frozen on the rifle, training screamed to run, experience said, stay still, mind said, document everything. At 50 yards it stopped, clear view now, height, confirmed 8+ feet, build, massive musculature, features, heavy brow, no neck, hands, huge, 5 fingers, feet, enormous, clearly bipedal. It made another sound, different pattern, duration, 8 seconds, tone, higher pitch, structure, quick, sharp elements, volume, less powerful, more directed. Then it turned. 3 long strides took it into thick cover. The movement through brush showed its path. Direction, northwest speed, steady, unhurried. Pattern, deliberate route. Sign, broken branches, disturbed vegetation. I waited 30 minutes, counted every second, finally moved when my legs stopped shaking. Documented everything. Tracks, length, 17 inches width at ball, 8 inches width at heel, 6 inches depth, 2 inches in soft soil, clear dermal ridges, 5 toes, human-like arrangement, broken branches, height, 8 to 9 feet, diameter, up to 4 inches, break pattern, clean, powerful spacing, regular intervals, trail markers, systematic placement, clear pattern, obvious intelligence in arrangement, purpose unclear, but definite hair samples, length, 3 to 6 inches, color, dark brown texture, coarse location, on bark where branches broke. Environmental signs, vegetation disturbance patterns, clear travel route, regular spacing of signs, obvious territory marking photographs taken, all tracks with scale, broken branches in situ, hair samples, trail markers, path of travel, height references, measurements recorded, all track dimensions, stride lengths, height markers, distance references, GPS coordinates, time stamps called Forest Service at 5 p.m. They sent rangers. More documentation, official photographs, plaster casts, hair sample collection, soil samples, Forest Service incident report. My witness statement lab results came back. Hair analysis, unknown primate track study, clear primate characteristics, DNA testing, inconclusive wood fiber analysis, shows tremendous strength used. The facts stand. Date, October 8, 2023. Location, Gifford Pinchot, National Forest. Time, 3:45 p.m. to approximately 4:15 p.m. Physical evidence collected, multiple agency confirmation laboratory analysis, showing unknown species I still hunt, still guide, still track game. But differently now, more cameras, better documentation tools, different safety protocols, new awareness. That's what happened. Every detail exact, every measurement precise, every observation accurate. Take it as professional testimony from someone with 30 years of woods experience. The evidence is still there, still in my photos, still in official reports, still in the lab results. Real, physical, documented, something that shouldn't exist, but does. I'm a hunter. I deal in facts, in sign, in physical evidence. What I saw that day is fact. The evidence is clear. The documentation is precise. The analysis is confirmed. That's my report. Every word true, every detail accurate, every fact verified, just the truth as seen by experienced eyes. Story 10. My name is Siobhan O'Malley. I'm a field geologist with 15 years of experience studying volcanic formations in the Cascade Range. What I witnessed during my survey last summer defied every scientific principle I've ever learned. It was July 15, 2023. I was conducting a geological survey of a previously unmapped area near Mount Baker. The weather was clear. Temperature 72 degrees at 4 p.m. Visibility excellent. I recorded these details in my field notebook, just like always. My equipment was standard: rock hammer, sample bags, GPS unit, field microscope, camera, sample collection tools. The backpack weighed 28 pounds. I always weigh my gear to monitor sample weight. The location was promising. Exposed basalt formations. Clear evidence of ancient lava flows. Good access to deeper geological layers. I'd spent the day taking samples and measurements. At 6:30 p.m., I reached a high meadow. The sun was still well above the horizon. Long summer days in the Pacific Northwest. I set up my sampling station and began documenting the rock formations. The first strange thing I noticed was the silence. Complete silence. No birds, no insects, no wind in the grass. Nothing. I checked my watch. 7:15 p.m. Still plenty of light, but something felt wrong. My skin prickled. The hair on my arms stood up. Movement caught my eye. At the tree line, about 200 yards away, something large stepped out of the forest. I reached for my camera, started recording. The figure moved with smooth, deliberate steps across the meadow. It was tall, much taller than any human. I estimated 2.8 meters, using the nearby trees for scale. Broad-shouldered, covered in dark fur. The creature walked upright, perfect bipedal motion, long arms swinging naturally. Its gait was smooth, efficient, not like a bear or any other quadruped attempting to walk on two legs. I kept the camera steady. My hands were shaking, but the image stabilization helped. The light was perfect. Clear line of sight. The being stopped halfway across the meadow, turned its head toward me. The movement was quick, precise, intentional. I saw its face clearly through my camera's zoom lens. Not human, not ape. Something else entirely. The eyes were large, dark, set under a pronounced brow ridge. Those eyes looked directly at me, at my camera. There was awareness there, intelligence, understanding. The creature made a sound, low, resonant. It vibrated in my chest cavity, a complex vocalization with multiple tones. An answer came from the forest behind me. Similar sounds, different pitch, different pattern, like a language. My heart rate spiked. Sweat ran down my back despite the cooling air. My fingers felt numb on the camera. The creature turned fully toward me. Its size became apparent. The musculature was visible even through the fur. Massive shoulders, powerful legs. It took a step in my direction. The ground vibrated slightly with its weight. I estimated 350–400 kilograms based on the compression of the soil. Another sound from the forest. Urgent, higher pitched. The creature stopped. It made a gesture, raised one hand, palm outward. A clear signal, universal. Stop. Stay back. Then it turned and walked away. No hurry, no fear, just deliberate movement back toward the tree line. The sound of its footsteps changed as it crossed different geological formations. Solid rock, loose scree, soft soil. Each surface produced distinct acoustic signatures. I kept recording until it disappeared into the forest. The camera's memory card showed 4 minutes and 12 seconds of footage. More sounds came from the woods. Complex vocalizations, different tones, different rhythms. Communication. I stood there for several minutes. My legs felt weak. My mouth was dry. The camera felt heavy in my hands. Finally, I moved, walked to where the creature had stood. The ground was compressed, clear footprints in the softer soil. I took measurements, used my rock hammer for scale in photos. Each print was 42 centimeters long. The stride length was 1.9 meters. The prints showed clear anatomical details: 5 toes, pronounced arch, heel strike patterns similar to human gait, but much larger scale. I took soil samples from the prints, found dark hairs caught in nearby vegetation, collected everything in sterile bags, standard field procedure. The light was fading now, sunset approaching, but I kept working, documented everything: measurements, photos, samples, GPS coordinates. More sounds came from the forest, different directions now, multiple sources. They were moving, circling. I packed up quickly, efficiently. Years of fieldwork had taught me how to move fast when needed. The walk back to my vehicle took 45 minutes, uphill. The sounds followed, never close, never far, just present. I reached my truck at 8:50 p.m. My hands shook as I loaded my equipment. The sounds had stopped, but that feeling of being watched remained. The drive back to Seattle was long, 4 hours. I kept checking my mirrors, kept seeing movement in the trees along the road. In my lab, I examined the evidence. The soil samples showed unusual compression patterns. The hair samples were problematic. Initial analysis suggested primate origin, but not human, not any known species. The DNA sequencing came back with markers that didn't match anything in our databases. I sent samples to colleagues: hair to a zoologist, soil to a forensic analyst, footprint casts to a physical anthropologist. The responses were all similar: interesting but inconclusive, outside normal parameters, requiring further study. The video footage was clear: 4 minutes and 12 seconds of steady footage. Good light, multiple angles. I submitted it for analysis: digital forensics, video enhancement, frame-by-frame study. The results were fascinating: natural movement patterns, consistent shadow placement, no evidence of digital manipulation. The size calculations were confirmed: 2.8 meters tall. Estimated mass 350–400 kilograms. Proportions outside human norms, but consistently maintained throughout the footage. I've been back to the site multiple times, always during daylight, always with a partner now. The footprints have weathered away, but other signs remain: broken branches at height, hair samples caught in bark, that lingering sense of being watched. I've set up research equipment, motion sensors, audio recorders, camera traps, everything carefully documented and logged. The data is strange. Equipment malfunctions, batteries drain rapidly, memory cards corrupt. But sometimes, before the equipment fails, it captures something: low-frequency vocalizations, infrared signatures, movement patterns. The scientific part of my brain tries to categorize it, to force it into known parameters, to make it fit existing models. But it doesn't fit. The size, the intelligence, the deliberate way it revealed itself. I'm a geologist. I deal in rock formations, in measurable, quantifiable data, in things that can be proven and repeated. This doesn't fit any of those categories. But the evidence exists: the video, the prints, the samples. Something intelligent walks these mountains, something that understands cameras, that communicates with complex vocalizations, that chooses when to be seen. The video sits in my computer. The samples are labeled and stored. The data is recorded in my field notebooks. Everything properly documented, everything following scientific protocol. But science doesn't have a category for what I saw that day, for what looked into my camera with intelligent eyes and chose to let me record its presence. The evidence is there, in the footage, in the samples, in the data. Something lives in these mountains, something that walks on 2 legs and leaves 42-centimeter footprints, something that understands it's being studied, and sometimes, when I'm reviewing the footage late at night, I wonder if it's studying us too. Story 11. The camera wasn't supposed to be there. We'd moved all our equipment the day before, but this one trail cam got left behind. What it recorded that night changed everything I thought I knew about North American wildlife. My name is Astrid Nilsson, wildlife researcher, PhD candidate at the University of Washington. Project focus: large mammal behavior patterns in the North Cascades. The recording happened on September 23, 2023. Camera specifications: Reconyx Hyperfire 2. Professional grade motion activated infrared capability, 1080p resolution timestamp overlay, temperature sensor moon phase indicator, location details, coordinates, 48 Digant 28 14.5, N100 Inoxi 1 Gajro 345.9 W, elevation, 3,050 feet, habitat, old growth forest, weather, clear night temperature, 45 degrees south, moon, half moon, time, 2:13 a.m. I found the camera the next morning. Standard procedure: check memory card, download footage, clear card, reset camera, check battery level, verify settings. The first clips were normal: 10:15 p.m., deer passing, 11:30 p.m., small bear, 12:45 a.m., elk herd, 1:20 a.m., coyote. Then came 2:13 a.m. The footage runs 4 minutes 12 seconds. I've watched it 347 times. Every detail is burned into my memory. Frame by frame breakdown: 0.0, 0.15. Motion sensor triggers, nothing visible. Camera adjusts to low light, forest normal, 0.16, 0.30. Movement at edge of frame, large shadow, upright figure. Height estimate, 8 feet, 0.31, 1 zho. Figure moves into frame, clear bipedal walk. Smooth motion, deliberate steps. Physical details visible. Height, 8'2", compared to marked tree. Build, massive upper body. Arms, long, proportionally larger than human legs. Thick, powerful hair. Dark, full coverage. Head, large, no distinct neck. Face, heavy brow, deep-set eyes. The figure's movement pattern: stride length, 6.5 feet. Gait, natural bipedal speed. Casual walking pace. Balance, perfect center of gravity. Arm swing, controlled, purposeful head movement. Scanning environment. At 1:01, it notices the camera. The behavior changes, stops moving. Head turns directly to lens, body posture shifts, shows clear awareness. The intelligence in its eyes hit me hard. My hands shook watching the footage. This wasn't animal curiosity. This was evaluation, assessment, thinking. 1:02, 1.45. The investigation begins. Approaches camera, slowly examines from multiple angles. Touches tree mount, tests, camera fixture, shows problem-solving behavior. The fingers were clear in frame. 5 digits, opposable thumb, fine motor control, human-like manipulation, large size, scale against tree bark. At 1:46, it makes a decision. The movements become purposeful. Reaches for camera, careful grip, controlled force, deliberate action. The camera moves. Viewing angle changes, now pointing skyward. The figure's face fills the frame. Eyes, dark, intelligent brow, heavy, pronounced. Nose, wide, flat mouth, large, human-like expression, focused, curious. 2:30. The examination continues. Turns camera different angles, studies lens and housing tests, mounting bracket shows, clear understanding of device. At 2:31, the vocalizations start. Duration, 15 seconds. Tone, low, resonant pattern. Structured sounds. Volume, moderate but powerful. Audio analysis shows frequency range, 150 Hz. Regular patterns, repeated elements. Speech-like structure, 2:46, 3:15. The interaction changes, returns, camera to tree, adjusts to original angle, secures mounting shows, mechanical understanding. The precision shocked me. This wasn't random, wasn't accidental. The movements showed problem-solving, fine motor skills, spatial awareness, tool comprehension. 3.16, 3.45. The figure steps back, returns to original position, maintains eye contact with lens, shows clear self-awareness, demonstrates understanding of recording. Then came the second vocalization. Duration, 20 seconds. Different pattern, higher frequency, more complex structure. 346 4.12, the departure, smooth turn, deliberate steps, natural movement, controlled exit. The next morning I found camera intact, properly mounted, slightly adjusted angle, clear fingerprints in dust, physical evidence collected, hair samples from tree, prints in soil, trace evidence, finger marks on camera, measurements taken, track dimensions, length 17 inches, width 7.5 inches, depth 2 inches, clear dermal ridges, height markers, branch breaks at 8 feet, hair samples at 7.5 feet, view angle calculations, scale comparisons, lab analysis returned, hair, unknown primate, prints, primate characteristics, DNA, inconclusive audio, complex patterns. The footage exists. It's been verified. No editing, no manipulation. Timestamp authentic multiple expert review. Facts remain. Date, September 23, 2023. Time, 2:13-2:17 a.m. Location, North Cascades. Clear footage. Physical evidence, laboratory confirmation. I've set up more cameras, better angles, higher resolution, more coverage, constant monitoring. That's what happened. Every detail exact, every observation precise, every measurement accurate. Take it as research data, nothing more, nothing less. The footage is still there, still clear, still real, still showing something that science says is impossible. But I have the video, I have the evidence. I know what the camera recorded. I'm a researcher. I work with data, with evidence, with verifiable facts. What that camera recorded is fact. The footage is clear. The evidence is solid. The analysis is confirmed. That's my report. Every word true. Every detail accurate. Every fact documented. Just the truth as recorded by professional equipment and verified by scientific protocols. Current status. Original footage secured. Multiple backups made, chain of custody, documented ongoing investigation, additional monitoring in place, regular site checks, expanded research parameters. The camera's still out there, still recording, still waiting, because whatever it filmed that night is still out there too. Real, physical, documented, something that shouldn't exist, but does. I check the footage every day, every hour, looking for more evidence, more proof, more confirmation of what we caught on camera that night. The truth is in the footage, in the evidence, in the data. Something extraordinary happened that night in the North Cascades, something that changed everything we thought we knew about what lives in these forests. Story 12. My name is Alejandro Ruiz. I'm a research botanist specializing in Pacific Northwest forest ecosystems. What I found during my field research last summer challenged everything I understood about forest structures and animal behavior. August 12, 2023. I was conducting a survey of understory plant species in the Olympic National Forest. The location was remote, 3 miles from the nearest trail. Weather conditions were ideal, 68 degrees, partly cloudy, light breeze from the northwest. My equipment was standard: plant press, collection bags, GPS unit, digital camera, specimen tools, everything weighed and logged. Professional habit. At 10:30 a.m. I noticed something unusual, a group of young western red cedars, bent and woven together, not natural growth patterns, not wind damage, not bare activity. The trees were deliberately shaped, bent at precise angles, woven together to form a dome-like structure. The engineering was complex, intentional. I approached carefully, took measurements. The structure was approximately 3 meters high at the center, 4.5 meters in diameter at the base. The trees were bent without breaking. Skilled work. Inside the structure, the ground was cleared. Packed earth. Signs of regular use. I found fruit pits, berry seeds, small animal bones, all arranged in distinct piles. The smell hit me first. Strong, musky, unlike any forest odor I'd encountered in 20 years of fieldwork. It made my nose burn. I took samples, documented everything, standard protocol, photos, measurements, GPS coordinates, specimen collection. The bones were interesting, clean, no tooth marks, no evidence of animal feeding. They appeared to have been deliberately cleaned and sorted by size. More structures became visible as I worked. Similar construction, different sizes. A pattern emerged, a settlement layout. I checked my GPS, made notes. The structures formed a rough circle, approximately 100 meters in diameter, centered on a small spring. At 11:45 a.m. I heard it. A sound like wood striking wood, rhythmic, deliberate, coming from the forest to my north. Another sound answered, similar rhythm, different tone, then another, and another. They were coming from different directions. My hands started shaking, the camera felt heavy, sweat ran down my back despite the cool air. Movement caught my eye. Something large, moving between the trees, fast, silent despite its size. I raised my camera, started recording. The figure was partially visible through the branches. It was huge, bipedal, at least 2.7 meters tall, dark fur, massive shoulders, moving with purpose. Another figure appeared, similar size. They worked together, bending saplings, weaving branches, building another structure. Their movements were precise, coordinated. They communicated with low sounds, grunts and whistles, complex patterns. I kept filming. My heart was pounding, my mouth was dry, but I kept the camera steady. One of them turned, looked directly at me. The eyes were dark, intelligent, aware. The creature made a sound, low, resonant. It vibrated in my chest. The others stopped working, turned toward me, 5 of them, all massive, all watching. I lowered my camera, slowly, carefully. My legs felt weak. The first one made a gesture, pointed at my camera, then at the structures. A clear message, no more recording. They didn't move towards me, didn't threaten, just watched, waited. I packed my equipment, quick, efficient movements. Years of fieldwork had taught me to be methodical even when afraid. The walk back to my vehicle took an hour, uphill, through dense forest. I felt them following, never saw them, just knew. The sounds continued, wood on wood, different rhythms, different locations. They were tracking my movement. I reached my truck at 1:30 p.m. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. The key missed twice before I got it in. The drive back to Seattle was long, 4 hours. I kept checking my mirrors, kept seeing movement in the trees. In my lab, I examined the evidence. The samples told a story, an impossible story. The soil from the structures showed high levels of compaction, regular use. The arrangement of the sites suggested planning, organization. The bones were fascinating, clean cuts, tool marks, evidence of systematic processing, not animal feeding, not human hunting. The video footage was clear, 2 minutes and 18 seconds, good light, multiple angles. I sent samples to colleagues, soil to a forensic lab, bones to a zoologist, video to a wildlife behavior expert. The responses were uniform, interesting but inconclusive, outside normal parameters, requiring further study. I've been back to the site 6 times, always during daylight, always with a partner now. The structures are still there, more of them. The construction continues, the settlement grows. I've set up research equipment, motion sensors, camera traps, audio recorders, everything carefully hidden and secured. The data is strange, equipment failures, battery drainage, corrupted memory cards. But sometimes before the equipment dies, it catches something. Low-frequency sounds, heat signatures, movement patterns. The scientific part of my brain tries to categorize it, to make it fit known patterns, to force it into existing frameworks, but it doesn't fit. The complexity, the organization, the deliberate nature of the construction. I'm a botanist. I study plants, growth patterns, natural structures. This isn't natural, but it isn't human either. The evidence sits in my lab, samples, photos, video footage, all properly documented, all following scientific protocol. The structures show tool use, planning, engineering knowledge, social organization. Something intelligent lives in those woods, something that builds shelters, that processes food, that uses tools. And sometimes when I'm reviewing the footage late at night, I see those eyes again, looking directly into my camera, understanding exactly what it was. The structures are still there, still being built, still being used. Something lives in our forests, something that bends trees into shelters and communicates with wooden signals, something that understands it's being studied. The evidence is there, in the samples, in the footage, in those carefully constructed domes of living trees. I'm a scientist. I deal in facts, in measurable data, in reproducible results. But what I found that day doesn't fit any scientific category I know. What looked at me with intelligent eyes and chose to let me document their work. The video sits in my computer. The samples are catalogued and stored. The data is recorded in my field notebooks. Everything properly documented. Everything following scientific protocol. But science doesn't have a category for what I saw, for what's building those structures in our forests. And sometimes, when I'm examining those samples late at night, I wonder what they're learning about us. Story 13. The vegetation wasn't natural. 15 years as a forest engineer taught me what random damage looks like. This was different, systematic, intentional. Something had arranged those branches with purpose, something that thought. My name is Raj Patel, Senior Forest Engineer with the U.S. Forest Service. I specialize in analyzing forest damage patterns. The incident occurred during a routine survey in the Olympic National Forest. Date, August 5th, 2023. Survey conditions. Location, 47 to 42.18.9 N, 123 to 37.42.1 W. Elevation, 3,150 feet. Weather, partly cloudy. Temperature, 62 degree. Time, 10:30 a.m. Visibility, clear. Standard equipment, laser rangefinder, GPS unit, digital camera, field notebook, measuring tape, sample collection kit, topographic maps, tablet with GIS software. Initial observations showed unusual patterns. Young trees bent at consistent heights, regular spacing between modifications, clear direction of movement, signs of repeated use. The first bent tree cluster, 5 trees involved, heights 10-12 feet, diameter 2 to 3 inches, bent, not broken, woven together, created obvious passage. Measurements taken, spacing between clusters 50 feet, path width 8 feet, height clearance 8 feet, pattern repetition every 50 feet, direction northwest to southeast. This wasn't storm damage, wasn't animal activity. The precision stood out, consistent angles, regular spacing, deliberate weaving, clear purpose. My hands shook taking measurements. 15 years of experience screamed that this was wrong, different, impossible. Documentation process, photographs with scale GPS coordinates, detailed sketches, measurements, sample collection, environmental readings. The pattern extended 500 yards, 10 major clusters, consistent design, regular spacing, clear travel route. Then the sound started, low, rhythmic, like wood hitting wood, but patterned, deliberate, coming from the northwest end of the formation. Physical reactions kicked in, heart rate increased, palms sweated, throat tightened, muscles tensed. The sound pattern, duration, 8 seconds, pause, 4 seconds, repeat, 3 times, direction, changing slightly. Professional training took over. Documented sound, noted timing, recorded direction changes, observed pattern. The smell hit next. Strong, musky odor, not bear or elk, chemical undertones, growing stronger. Movement caught my eye. 100 yards northwest, among bent trees, large figure upright stance, through my rangefinder, height, 8 feet minimum. Build, massive movement, bipedal color, dark brown, black. The figure moved with purpose, long strides, smooth gait, deliberate path, following bent tree route, details visible through rangefinder, broad shoulders, long arms, heavy musculation, full hair coverage. It stopped at a bent cluster, examined structure, touched connections, adjusted angles, showed clear purpose. The intelligence displayed froze me. Systematic examination, purposeful adjustments, tool-like use of branches, clear understanding of structure. It turned toward me. Direct eye contact, aware stance, deliberate movement, calculated observation, eyes locked on my position, dark-colored forward-facing intelligent gaze, evaluating look. A sound came from it. Duration, 15 seconds, complex pattern, multiple tones, clear structure. The vocalization characteristics, low frequency, repeated elements, changing pitch pattern variations, physical response intensified, legs shaking, heart pounding, breathing shallow muscles locked. It moved closer, smooth strides, direct approach, controlled movement, purpose, clear, distance readings, starting 100 yards, closing to 50 yards, speed 3 yards, second direct line. At 50 yards, it stopped. Clear view now, full height visible, details apparent, presence massive, physical details observed, height 8'2", laser measured, shoulders 4 feet wide, arms below knee length, build 400 plus pounds, facial features visible, heavy brow, wide nose, large eyes, pronounced jaw. It made another sound, different pattern, higher pitch, shorter duration, more directed, then it turned, smooth motion, 3 strides into forest, following bent trees. I waited 30 minutes, no movement, no sounds, smell lingering, heart pounding. Documentation resumed, photographs, measurements, samples, GPS points, physical evidence collected, hair samples, length 3 to 6 inches, color, dark brown texture, course location, multiple sites, tracks, length 17 inches, width 8 inches, depth 2 inches, clear prints, environmental signs, bent vegetation, regular patterns, usage signs, travel routes, measurements recorded, structure dimensions, track spacing, path widths, height markers, called Forest Service, reported findings, requested team, documented location, secured site investigation team arrived, full documentation, sample collection site survey, witness statement lab results returned. Hair, unknown primate. Prints, primate characteristics, DNA, inconclusive plant analysis shows intentional modification, facts remain. Date, August 5, 2023. Location, Olympic National Forest. Time, 10:30 a.m., 12 p.m. Physical evidence collected, multiple agency documentation, laboratory analysis, confirms unknown species, site monitoring continues. Regular checks, camera placement, track documentation, structure observation. That's what happened. Every detail exact, every measurement precise, every observation accurate. Take it as professional testimony based on 15 years of forest engineering experience. The evidence still exists. Bent trees remain, tracks preserved, samples stored, documentation filed. I'm an engineer. I work with facts, with measurements, with physical evidence. What I saw that day is fact. The evidence is clear. The documentation is precise. The analysis is confirmed. That's my report. Every word true, every detail accurate, every fact verified. Just the truth as observed by trained eyes and measured by professional instruments. Current status: site monitored, evidence secured, investigation ongoing, regular checks scheduled, additional documentation continues. The structures are still there, still showing purpose, still showing intelligence, still showing something that shouldn't exist, but does. Story 14. My name is Yuki Yamamoto. I've been a professional mountaineer for 12 years, with over 200 successful alpine climbs. What I encountered during my solo ascent last winter made me question everything I knew about mountain survival. January 15th, 2024. I was attempting a winter ascent of a remote peak in the North Cascades. The conditions were ideal. Temperature 5°C, clear sky, wind 5 knots from the northwest. Perfect climbing weather. My equipment was standard alpine gear, ice axes, crampons, ropes, protection gear, emergency supplies. Total pack weight 32 pounds. I always weigh my gear, critical for technical climbs. I started the approach at 4:30 a.m. Headlamp visibility 30 meters. Fresh snow from 2 days prior made route finding easy. The snow squeaked under my crampons. The first unusual thing I noticed was the silence. Complete silence. No wind, no falling ice, no creaking snow, nothing. At 6:45 a.m. first light hit the mountain. The snow turned pink. That's when I saw the tracks. They came from a steep couloir to my left. Large prints, bipedal, walking upright across a 45-degree slope. No slide marks. Perfect balance. I photographed the prints, used my ice axe for scale. Each print was 43 centimeters long. The stride length was incredible. 2 meters between steps on steep terrain. The tracks showed clear toe impressions, 5 toes, like human prints but massive, and the gait was smooth, even on the steep snow. I followed the tracks. They led up the mountain, straight up, no switchbacks, no hesitation on technical sections. At 7:30 a.m., I heard it. A deep sound. Not an avalanche, not falling rock. Something else, something alive. The sound echoed off the cliffs. Multiple responses came from different directions. Complex vocalizations, different tones, different patterns. My hands started shaking. The camera felt heavy. Sweat froze on my face despite the cold. Movement caught my eye, high up on the ridge, something large traversing a near vertical rock face, fast, agile. I raised my camera, started filming. The figure moved with impossible speed and grace across the cliff. It was huge, at least 2.8 meters tall, dark fur, massive shoulders, moving with absolute confidence on terrain that would challenge elite climbers. Another figure appeared, then another. They moved together, coordinated, communicating with those deep sounds. Their climbing technique was unlike anything I'd seen. No protection gear, no ropes, just pure strength and perfect balance. One of them stopped, turned toward me. The morning sun lit its face clearly. The eyes were dark, intelligent. They locked onto mine across 200 meters of space. The creature made a sound, low, powerful. It vibrated in my chest even at that distance. The others stopped moving, all turned to look at me, 5 of them, all massive, all watching. My heart hammered in my chest. My mouth went dry. My legs felt weak despite years of mountain fitness. The first one made a gesture, pointed at me, then pointed up the mountain, then down. A clear choice, up or down. I chose down. Slowly unclipped from my protection, started backing away. They watched me descend, never moved toward me, just watched. The sounds continued, those deep vocalizations, different tones, different rhythms. They were communicating about me. I kept looking up as I descended, kept seeing movement on the cliffs, impossible movement, too fast, too smooth. The descent took 3 hours. The tracks were still visible in the snow, still perfect despite the steep angle. I reached my car at 11:45 a.m. My hands shook as I unlocked it. Had to try 3 times to get the key in. The drive back to Seattle was long, 5 hours. I kept checking my mirrors, kept seeing movement in the trees along the road. In my apartment, I examined the evidence. The photos showed everything clearly. The video was stable despite my shaking hands. The tracks were perfect. Clear toe impressions, precise stride length, consistent depth even on steep terrain. I sent the evidence to colleagues, photos to climbing experts, video to wildlife specialists, track measurements to anthropologists. The responses were all similar, interesting but inconclusive, outside normal parameters, requiring further study. I've been back to that mountain 3 times, always with partners now, always in full daylight. The tracks are often there, fresh ones, different patterns, different lines up the mountain. I've set up cameras, motion sensors, recording equipment, everything carefully hidden in the rocks. The data is strange: equipment failures, battery drain, corrupted memory cards. But sometimes before the equipment dies, it catches something. Low-frequency sounds, heat signatures in impossible places, movement at impossible speeds. The climbing community doesn't talk about these things, not officially. But late at night, around campfires, the stories come out. Tracks in impossible places, sounds that don't fit known species, movement on cliffs that defy human capability. I'm a climber. I deal in facts, in rope lengths and protection placements, in clear, measurable things. But what I saw that day doesn't fit those categories. What moved across that cliff face with impossible speed and grace. The evidence sits in my computer. Photos, videos, measurements, all properly documented. But documentation doesn't capture everything, doesn't capture the intelligence in those eyes, the deliberate nature of their movements. Something lives in these mountains, something that climbs vertical rock without protection and communicates with deep, complex sounds. And sometimes, when I'm planning a new route late at night, I wonder what they think of our ropes and protection, our slow, careful movements on their cliffs. The tracks are still there, still being made, fresh ones after every snow. Something moves in these mountains, something that walks upright and leaves 43-centimeter prints in steep snow, something that understands climbing better than any human ever could. The evidence is there, in the photos, in the videos, in those perfect tracks across impossible terrain. I'm a mountaineer. I've spent my life in these peaks, thought I knew every challenge they could offer. I was wrong. The videos sit in my computer. The photos are filed and labeled. The measurements are recorded in my climbing logs. Everything properly documented. Everything following standard recording protocols. But protocols don't have a category for what I saw, for what moves across those cliffs with impossible speed and grace. And sometimes when I'm climbing a difficult route, I feel eyes watching from above. Intelligent eyes. Eyes that know these mountains in ways we never will. The mountains hold secrets. Secrets that move on two legs and climb without ropes. Secrets that watch us struggle up their cliffs. And sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I hear those deep sounds echoing off the peaks. And I know they're still out there, still climbing, still watching, just out of sight, just beyond reach, but always there. Story 15. No animal throws rocks with accuracy. No animal calculates trajectory. That day in the Cascades, something threw rocks at my group. Not randomly, not in anger, with purpose, with precision, with intelligence. My name is Isabella Rossi, professional trekking guide. 10 years of wilderness experience. I've led hundreds of groups through the Pacific Northwest Mountains. The incident happened during a standard 4-day trek in the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. It was September 12, 2023. The morning started normally. We broke camp at 7 a.m., 6 clients, all experienced hikers. The weather was clear, temperature around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Light wind from the northwest, perfect hiking conditions. Our route followed an established trail up to the ridgeline. We were at 4,800 feet elevation. The forest was thick here, old growth pines and firs. The underbrush was dense. Visibility extended about 30 yards through the trees. I checked my GPS at 9:30 a.m. We were exactly where we should be, 2 miles into our day's planned route. The group was maintaining good pace. Everyone was alert, hydrated, properly spaced on the trail, standard procedure. The first rock hit at 9:43 a.m. It landed 10 feet ahead of our lead hiker, not rolled down the slope, not fallen from above, thrown. The trajectory was clear. The rock was the size of a baseball. It landed with purpose. I signaled the group to stop. Standard hand signals, No voice. My ears strained for sound. My eyes scanned the slope above us. The forest had gone quiet. No birds, no squirrels, just the sound of 6 people breathing hard from the climb. The second rock landed 15 feet ahead. Same size, same deliberate placement. No random tumble, no natural fall line. A calculated throw from the slope above us. My hands tightened on my trek poles. My mouth went dry. Through my binoculars, I scanned the ridgeline. The slope rose about 200 feet above us. Dense forest, rocky outcrops, perfect cover for something that didn't want to be seen. Then I saw movement, large movement, behind a stand of young pines. The figure was massive. My binoculars were calibrated with a rangefinder. The height calculated against known tree sizes, over 8 feet. The body was covered in dark hair. The movement was smooth, upright, controlled, not like a bear standing. This was natural bipedal motion. Another rock landed, 20 feet ahead now, same size, same precision. The message was clear: don't go forward. My group huddled close. I could hear their breathing quicken, feel their tension. Professional instincts kicked in. Protect the clients, assess the threat, plan the retreat. The figure moved again, smooth stride, long arms, massive shoulders. It picked up another rock. The motion was deliberate, calculated. The arm drew back. The throw was powerful, controlled. The rock landed exactly where intended, 25 feet ahead of us. My hands were shaking now. Sweat ran down my back despite the cool morning. 10 years of wilderness experience told me this was wrong. This was impossible. This was intelligent behavior, calculated behavior, purposeful behavior. Through the binoculars, I could see details now. The head was large, set directly on the shoulders, no distinct neck. The face was flat, with a heavy brow ridge. The eyes caught the morning light. Dark eyes, intelligent eyes, watching eyes. The creature moved to another position. The motion was smooth, natural. No stumbling on the steep slope, no awkward moments, just fluid, powerful movement. It found another rock. The throwing motion was perfect, practiced. The rock landed 30 feet ahead. I made the call. We were retreating. No discussion, no debate, professional judgment. The creature was blocking our path with purpose, with intelligence, with skill. We weren't dealing with an animal. We were dealing with something that could think, plan, calculate. The retreat was orderly, standard procedure, group tight together, steady pace, no running, no panic, just controlled withdrawal. The rocks stopped coming as soon as we turned back. The message had been received. The communication was clear. As we moved away, a sound echoed through the forest, low at first, building to something between a growl and speech. It vibrated through my chest, made my teeth buzz, lasted exactly 12 seconds. I know because I checked my watch, documented everything. The sound had structure, pattern, repeated elements, not random noise, not animal calls. This was communication. The timestamp on my watch read 9:57 a.m. The temperature was 57 degrees. The wind had died completely. The forest remained silent. We hiked 2 miles back down the trail. No more rocks, no more sounds. But the feeling of being watched never left. The back of my neck tingled. My skin prickled. Every sense stayed on high alert. Professional training kept me focused. Keep the group safe. Maintain order. Document everything. At the first safe stopping point, I took out my notebook. Standard guide procedure. Document incidents immediately. Every detail matters. The facts were clear. The first rock landed at 9:43 a.m., the last at 9:54 a.m. 6 rocks total, each thrown with purpose, each landing in a deliberate spot, each carrying a clear message: stop advancing. The creature stood over 8 feet tall. The calculation was precise. Tree heights were marked on my maps. The binocular rangefinder was calibrated. The measurement was accurate. The movement was smooth, natural, bipedal. The throwing motion showed intelligence, skill, purpose. Back at the ranger station, I filed a complete report. Time, location, events, measurements. The rangers took samples from the scene. They found the rocks, documented the positions, took photographs, measured distances, found prints in the soft ground where the creature had stood. The prints told their own story, 17 inches long, 8 inches wide, clear toe impressions, obvious arch, deep in the rocky soil. The stride length between prints measured 6.5 feet. The rangers made casts, took photographs, collected hair samples from nearby branches. The laboratory results arrived 3 weeks later. The hair wasn't from any known species. The prints showed dermal ridges like human fingerprints. The depth of the prints indicated a weight over 700 pounds. The stride length and print size confirmed the height estimate. I've led hundreds of treks through these mountains. I know every animal, every track, every sound. What we encountered that day wasn't an animal. The behavior was too calculated, too intelligent, too purposeful. The rock throwing showed skill, intention, communication. The evidence exists. The ranger station has the report. The laboratory has the samples. The photographs show the prints. The measurements are precise. The documentation is complete. Something that shouldn't exist had communicated with us that day, had shown intelligence, had demonstrated purpose. I still guide treks, still lead groups through these mountains. But things are different now. New protocols, more cameras, better documentation, constant awareness. Because I know what's out there, what lives in these forests, what can think, plan, calculate. The facts remain clear. September 12, 2023. Mount Baker, Snoqualmie National Forest. 6 rocks thrown with precision. A creature over 8 feet tall. Prints 17 inches long. Hair samples from an unknown primate. Laboratory analysis confirming something unknown to science. That's what happened that morning. Every detail exact. Every measurement precise. Every observation accurate. Take it as professional testimony from someone with 10 years of wilderness experience. The evidence is clear. The documentation exists. The truth is in the facts. I tell my clients now that these mountains hold mysteries, that there are things here we don't understand. That intelligence comes in forms we haven't classified. The rocks that morning weren't random. They were communication. From something that could think, plan, calculate. The rangers still monitor that section of trail, still collect evidence, still document sightings. The laboratories still analyze samples, still confirm unknown origins, still verify the existence of something that science says is impossible. But I know what I saw, what my group saw, what the evidence shows. Something lives in these mountains, something intelligent, something that can think, plan, communicate, something that threw rocks with purpose that morning, something that shouldn't exist, but does. That's my report. Every word true, every detail accurate, every fact documented. The rocks tell the story. The prints confirm it. The evidence proves it. Something intelligent lives in these mountains. Something that can think, something that can communicate, something that exists despite our disbelief. The trail is still there. The slope still rises above it. The forest still holds its secrets. And sometimes, when the birds go quiet and the air grows still, rocks still land with purpose on that trail, still carry messages, still prove that something intelligent, something unknown, something real lives in these mountains. Story 16. My name is Magnus Larsson. I'm a wildlife researcher specializing in predator populations in the Pacific Northwest. What my camera traps captured last winter changed everything I thought I knew about North American wildlife. December 12, 2023. I was checking my network of camera traps in the Olympic National Forest. Standard equipment, Reconix HP2X professional cameras. Motion activated, infrared capability, 20 cameras spread over 10 square kilometers. The weather was cold, temperature 28 degrees, 6 inches of fresh snow on the ground, perfect conditions for tracking animal movements. I'd been monitoring this area for 3 years, documenting wolf packs, bear movements, cougar territories, normal predator behavior studies. At 2:30 p.m. I reached camera station 7. The camera was still there, but something was different. The camera had been moved, slightly. The angle was off by about 15 degrees. The mounting straps were still tight. I checked the memory card. Standard procedure. Review images on site before clearing the card. The first 1,000 images were normal. Deer, elk, a few coyotes, standard wildlife activity. Then the images changed. Timestamp showed 2:47 a.m., 3 nights ago. The first image showed something large, standing upright. The infrared flash illuminated a figure at least 2.5 meters tall. My hands started shaking. The camera's screen seemed too small, too inadequate for what I was seeing. The next image came 3 seconds later. The figure was closer, examining the camera. The face was clearly visible. Not human, not bear, not any known species. The eyes reflected the infrared light. Large, forward-facing, intelligent. The sequence continued. 12 images, each 3 seconds apart. The creature studied the camera from different angles. In the final image, one massive hand reached toward the lens. That's when the camera moved. The fingers were clearly visible, distinct fingerprints in the frost on the lens. I photographed everything, the camera position, the prints in the snow below, used my GPS unit for exact coordinates. The prints were fresh, 3 days old, but preserved in the frozen ground. Each print was 44 centimeters long, perfect toe definition, clear arch structure. More prints appeared as I looked, leading away from the camera. The stride length was incredible, 1.9 meters between steps. I followed the tracks. They led to camera station 8. That camera was also moved. Slightly, precisely. The memory card from station 8 told the same story. Night images, large figure, intelligent interaction with the camera. But these images showed something new. The creature wasn't alone. 3 figures appeared in the frames, all similar size, all moving with purpose. They worked together to examine the camera. The images showed clear social interaction, complex gestures, obvious communication between individuals. I checked camera station 9. Same story, more figures, more interaction, more evidence. My heart was pounding. Sweat froze on my back. My hands shook as I exchanged memory cards. All cameras in the north sector had been visited, all slightly adjusted, all capturing similar images. The timestamps showed a pattern. The creatures moved from camera to camera systematically. Understanding the surveillance network. A sound echoed through the forest. Deep, resonant, not a known animal call. Answers came from different directions, similar sounds, different tones, different patterns. I packed my gear quickly. Years of fieldwork had taught me when to leave an area. The sounds continued as I walked out. They were tracking my movement, communicating my position. I reached my truck at 4:45 p.m. The light was fading. My hands shook as I started the engine. The drive back to Seattle took 4 hours. I kept checking my mirrors, kept seeing movement in the darkness. In my lab, I examined the evidence. Hundreds of images, hours of data, all showing the same impossible things. The figures were consistent across all cameras. Same height, same build, same intelligent behavior. I sent copies to colleagues, wildlife biologists, primatologists, photography experts. The responses were uniform. Images appeared genuine, subjects unknown, data inconclusive. I've been back to the site weekly, always in daylight now, always with a partner. The cameras keep recording, keep being adjusted, keep capturing glimpses of something that shouldn't exist. I've upgraded the equipment. Higher resolution cameras, better infrared sensors, longer battery life. The results are the same. Clear images of impossible subjects, evidence of intelligence, evidence of organization. The scientific part of my brain tries to categorize it, to force it into known parameters, to make it fit existing models. But it doesn't fit. The size, the behavior, the obvious intelligence. I'm a researcher. I deal in data, in measurable evidence, in reproducible results. But what my cameras captured that night doesn't fit any scientific category I know. The images sit in my computer. The data fills my hard drives. The evidence mounts with each camera check. Everything properly documented. Everything following scientific protocol. But science doesn't have a category for what I captured, for what looks into my cameras with intelligent eyes and chooses to be recorded. Something lives in these forests, something that walks on two legs and leaves 44-centimeter prints, something that understands cameras and surveillance. The evidence is there, in the images, in the tracks, in the systematically adjusted cameras. Each week I download more data. Each week the evidence grows. They're still out there, still visiting my cameras, still choosing what to show me. And sometimes, when I'm reviewing the footage late at night, I realize they're not just subjects of my study. They're studying me too, learning my patterns, understanding my technology. The cameras keep recording, keep being adjusted, keep capturing glimpses of something that understands exactly what they're for. And somewhere in these forests, they're watching, learning, understanding, just out of clear view, just beyond definitive proof, but always there. My cameras don't lie. The data is real. The evidence exists. Something intelligent moves through these forests, something that understands surveillance and chooses when to be seen. And sometimes in those infrared images, I see them looking back, not just at my cameras, at me, at all of us, watching, waiting, learning. The evidence sits in my hard drives, thousands of images, hours of data. Something is studying us, something that walks upright and moves with purpose, something that understands far more than we realize. And every week, they leave me more evidence, more proof of their existence, just enough to know they're there, just enough to make me question everything I thought I knew. But never enough to prove it definitively, never enough to satisfy scientific scrutiny. They're too smart for that, too aware of what definitive proof would mean. So they keep giving me glimpses, keep leaving evidence, keep letting me know they're there, but always on their terms, always under their control. The cameras keep recording, the evidence keeps mounting, and somewhere in these forests, they're watching us watch them, learning, understanding, waiting. Story 17. Nothing moves through water like that. Not bears, not moose, not elk. What I saw cross that river moved with purpose, with skill, with intelligence. It knew the currents, it knew the depths, it knew exactly where to cross. My name is Dmitry Volkov, professional fishing guide, 25 years on the rivers of the Pacific Northwest. I've seen every animal these waters hold. What crossed the river that evening wasn't in any guidebook. The date was July 15th, 2023. I was at my usual spot on the North Fork Stillaguamish River. Remote location, about 12 miles from the nearest road. The water runs deep there, maybe 15 feet in the main channel. The current is strong. The banks are steep. I'd been there since dawn. The fishing was good that day. 8 steelhead, all caught and released according to regulations. The light was starting to fade. The sun was just touching the western ridgeline. The air temperature was dropping. Must have been around 65 degrees. My camp was simple. Small tent set back from the water. Fire pit dug to regulation depth. Food hung properly in a tree. The fish I'd kept for dinner were cleaned and stored in my cooler. Everything by the book. Everything normal. The first sign came with the birds. They went quiet all at once. No gradual silence. No slow fade out. just sudden, complete quiet. The river sound seemed louder in the silence, the current swirling around the rocks, the water lapping at the banks. Then the smell hit me. Strong, musky, like wet fur but different, sharper, more chemical. It filled my nostrils, made my eyes water. My hands tightened on my fishing rod. 25 years of river experience told me something was wrong. Movement caught my eye upstream. Something large was moving through the trees on the far bank. The light was getting dim, but I could still see clearly. The figure stepped out of the forest. It was huge, massive. It stood upright on two legs. The water at that crossing is treacherous. The current runs fast. The bottom drops away suddenly. I've seen bears get swept downstream trying to cross there, but this creature walked straight to the water's edge, stood there, looked at the current, studied it. It was at least 8 feet tall. The fading light caught its fur, dark brown or black, thick, matted in places. The shoulders were enormous. The arms hung long at its sides. The head sat directly on the shoulders, no real neck visible. The creature started to wade in. The motion was deliberate, calculated. It didn't fight the current, it used it. Stepped exactly where the water flow was weakest. Found each underwater rock by feel. Moved with complete confidence. My heart was pounding now. Sweat ran down my back despite the cooling air. I couldn't move, couldn't look away. The creature was halfway across. The water would have been chest deep on a man. It barely reached its waist. The crossing took maybe 2 minutes. Each step placed perfectly, each movement controlled. This wasn't luck. This wasn't instinct. This was knowledge, experience, intelligence. The creature knew this river, knew it well. When it reached my side, it stood still. Water streamed off its fur. Its head turned slowly. Those eyes found me instantly. Dark eyes, intelligent eyes, no fear in them, no aggression, just awareness, complete awareness. We looked at each other for maybe 30 seconds. Its breath steamed in the cooling air. Water dripped from its fur. The smell was overwhelming now, sharp, powerful, unlike anything I'd encountered in 25 years on these rivers. Then it moved, not toward me, not away from me, parallel to the bank. Each step deliberate, powerful. The wet fur showed its muscles clearly, the size of them, the strength. Its feet left clear prints in the soft mud of the bank. It walked past my camp, stopped at my cooler, the one with the fish. Looked at it, just looked. Then looked back at me. The message was clear. It wanted the fish. Not in a threatening way, not aggressively, just a clear, intelligent communication. My voice shook when I spoke, said it could have the fish, told it I would stay where I was. The words felt strange in the silence. The creature's head tilted slightly, like it was listening, understanding, considering. It reached down. The hand was huge, fingers, not claws, long fingers, strong fingers. It opened the cooler like it had done it before, knew how latches worked, knew about human containers. The intelligence in the action was undeniable. The creature took the fish, all of them, didn't damage the cooler, didn't make a mess, just took the fish, closed the lid, even latched it. The action was smooth, practiced, like it had done this many times before. Then it made a sound, low at first, building to something between a growl and speech. The sound had pattern, structure, meaning. It lasted maybe 15 seconds, made my chest vibrate, made my teeth feel strange. After the sound it turned, walked into the forest. The movement was smooth, powerful. 3 long strides took it into the trees. The branches parted, closed again. The creature was gone, but the smell lingered. The wet footprints remained. I sat there for 2 hours, couldn't move, could barely breathe. My hands shook, my legs felt weak, but my mind recorded everything, every detail, every movement, every sound. 25 years of professional experience kicking in, Document everything. When I could move again, I checked the prints. They were clear in the mud, 17 inches long, 8 inches wide at the ball of the foot. The stride length between prints was 6 feet. The depth showed something weighing at least 700 pounds had made them. I took photos, used my fishing license for scale, shot from every angle. The prints showed clear toe impressions, an obvious arch, dermal ridges like human fingerprints. These weren't bear tracks, weren't any kind of tracks I'd seen in 25 years on these rivers. The rangers came the next morning, made casts of the prints, took their own photos, collected hair samples from the branches where it had pushed through, found more prints, documented everything, filed reports, started an investigation. The lab results came back 3 weeks later. The hair wasn't from any known species. The DNA showed primate markers, but didn't match anything on record. The prints had human-like characteristics, but were way too large. The evidence proved something unknown had crossed that river. I still fish that spot, still guide there. But things are different now. I keep cameras set up, take more photos, document everything, because I know what's out there, know what lives along these rivers, what thinks, what plans, what communicates. The evidence exists. The ranger station has the casts, the lab has the samples, the photographs show the prints. Something crossed that river that evening, something intelligent, something that understood human objects, something that could communicate. That's what happened. Every detail exact, every observation precise, every fact documented. Take it as professional testimony from someone with 25 years of river experience. The evidence is clear. The documentation exists. The truth is in the facts. I tell my clients now that these rivers hold mysteries, that there are things here we don't understand, that intelligence comes in forms we haven't classified. What crossed the river that evening wasn't random, wasn't just an animal. It was something that could think, plan, communicate. The rangers still monitor that crossing, still collect evidence, still document sightings. The laboratories still analyze samples, still confirm unknown origins, still verify the existence of something that science says is impossible. But I know what I saw, what the evidence shows. Something lives along these rivers, something intelligent, something that knows how to use the water, how to handle human objects, how to communicate, something that shouldn't exist, but does. The river still flows, the crossing still exists, the forests still hold their secrets, and sometimes, when the birds go quiet and that smell fills the air, I know it's out there, still watching, still thinking, still crossing these rivers with purpose and skill. That's my story. Every word true, every detail accurate, every fact documented. The river tells the truth. The prints confirm it. The evidence proves it. Something intelligent lives here. Something that can think. Something that can plan. Something that exists despite our disbelief. Story 18. My name is Zara Patel. I'm an ornithologist specializing in nocturnal bird populations. What happened during my field research last autumn made me question everything I knew about forest ecosystems. October 3rd, 2023. I was conducting a night census of owls in Mount Rainier National Park. The conditions were perfect. Temperature 45 degrees, light cloud cover, mild breeze from the southeast. Ideal conditions for nocturnal bird activity. My equipment was standard: binoculars, audio recorder, night vision scope, GPS unit, notebook. Total pack weight 18 pounds. I always document my gear weight for consistency in field studies. At 11:30 p.m., I reached my primary observation point. The forest was alive with normal night sounds: crickets, wind in the trees, occasional owl calls. I began my standard recording procedure. The first unusual thing I noticed was the silence. It came suddenly. Complete silence. No crickets, no wind noise, No bird calls, nothing. I checked my watch. 11:47 p.m. Made a note in my field journal. Sudden cessation of all wildlife activity requires documentation. The silence lasted 3 minutes. I counted the seconds, wrote down the exact duration. Then I saw the shadow. Something moved between me and the stars. Something large, something upright. My hands started shaking. The night vision scope felt heavy. My mouth went dry. I raised the scope, adjusted the focus. The figure stood at the forest edge about 50 yards away. It was tall, much taller than any human. I estimated 2.7 meters using trees for scale. Broad shoulders, covered in dark fur. The creature moved with deliberate steps, bipedal, smooth gait. The ground vibrated slightly with each footfall. I activated my audio recorder. Standard procedure. Document everything. The recorder picked up deep, low-frequency sounds, below normal human hearing range. More shadows appeared. 3 more figures, similar size, moving together, coordinated. They communicated with those low sounds, different tones, different patterns. Complex vocalizations. My heart rate increased. Sweat ran down my back despite the cold. My fingers felt numb on the recorder. One figure turned toward me. The night vision scope showed its face clearly. Not human, not any known species. The eyes reflected the infrared light from my scope, large, forward-facing, intelligent. The creature made a sound, deep, resonant. It vibrated in my chest cavity. Others answered. Different tones, different rhythms. They were communicating about me. I kept recording, kept the scope steady. Years of fieldwork had taught me to document everything, even when afraid. The figures moved through the forest, silent despite their size, perfect night adaptation. They were hunting, working together, coordinated movements, organized search patterns. I watched them catch something, quick, efficient, shared the food, social behavior. The first one turned toward me again, made that deep sound. The others stopped moving. All 4 looked in my direction. The night vision scope showed their faces, all watching, all aware. My legs felt weak. My heart hammered in my chest. Every instinct screamed to run. But I kept recording, kept documenting. This was unprecedented behavioral data. They stayed for 23 minutes. I counted every second, wrote down every movement. Then they left. No sound, no disturbance, just gone. The forest stayed silent for 18 more minutes. I kept counting, kept writing. Normal sounds resumed at 12:51 a.m., crickets first, then wind noise, then owl calls. I stayed at my observation point until dawn. Standard procedure, complete the census. But no owls called that night. No nocturnal birds moved through my study area. At first light I checked the ground, found prints, large ones. The soil was hard, but they left clear impressions. I photographed the prints, used my field notebook for scale. Each print was 43 centimeters long. The stride length was incredible, 1.8 meters between steps, perfect bipedal gait pattern. I collected soil samples from the prints, found dark hairs near a tree they'd touched, bagged everything carefully. The drive back to Seattle took 3 hours. I kept checking my mirrors, kept seeing movement in the trees. In my lab, I examined the evidence. The audio recordings showed complex sound patterns, structured vocalizations. The hair samples were unusual, primate characteristics but not matching known species. The soil analysis showed high-pressure compression. Weight estimates indicated 300–400 kilograms per individual. I sent copies to colleagues, bioacoustics experts, primatologists, tracking specialists. The responses were uniform, interesting but inconclusive, outside normal parameters, requiring further study. I've been back to the site weekly, always at night, always alone, have to maintain study consistency. The sounds appear on my recordings, different patterns, different combinations, but clearly structured. I've upgraded my equipment, better audio recorders, thermal imaging, higher resolution night vision. The results are consistent: large bipedal creatures, social organization, complex communication. The scientific part of my brain tries to categorize it, to force it into known parameters, to make it fit existing models, but it doesn't fit. The size, the behavior, the obvious intelligence. I'm an ornithologist. I study birds, their patterns, their behaviors. This is something else entirely. The evidence sits in my lab: audio recordings, hair samples, photographs of prints, everything properly documented, everything following scientific protocol. But science doesn't have a category for what I recorded that night, for what looked at me through my night vision scope with intelligent eyes. Something hunts in these forests at night, something that walks on two legs and communicates with deep, complex sounds. The evidence is there, in the recordings, in the samples, in the prints. Each week I gather more data. Each week the evidence grows. They're still out there, still hunting, still communicating. And sometimes, when I'm at my observation point late at night, I feel them watching me. The sounds appear on my recordings. The prints show up in my study area, but always at their choice, always under their control. Something intelligent moves through these forests at night, something that understands observation and chooses when to be seen. The recordings keep growing, the evidence keeps mounting, but they control what I learn, what I see, what I record. Just enough to know they're there, just enough to document their existence, but never enough to prove it definitively, never enough to satisfy scientific scrutiny. They're too intelligent for that, too aware of what proof would mean, so they keep letting me record them, keep leaving evidence, keep showing up in my study area, but always on their terms, always under their conditions. The recordings continue, the research goes on, and somewhere in these dark forests they're watching me watch them, learning, understanding, waiting, just out of clear sight, just beyond definitive proof, but always there, always aware, always watching back. Story 19. The branches weren't randomly placed. They showed clear patterns, deliberate construction. Every morning we found new ones. Something was building them at night. Something that could plan, something that could create. My name is Sophia Andrade, field archaeologist, PhD from Stanford, 15 years experience studying primitive structures. The incidents occurred during an excavation in the Olympic National Forest. The date was June 20th, 2023. Our dig site was remote, 8 miles from the nearest road. The coordinates were 47 dig 38 815 2 N 123 dig 47 33.9 W, elevation 3,200 feet. We were excavating what we thought was a Native American seasonal camp. Our team numbered 6 people. The camp setup was standard: 3 research tents, 1 equipment tent, 1 kitchen tent, solar panels for power, satellite phone for emergencies. Everything positioned according to archaeological survey protocols. The first structure appeared on our 3rd morning. I found it during my initial site check at 6 a.m. The temperature was 48 degrees. The sky was clear. The air was still. The construction was complex. Young saplings bent into an arch, smaller branches woven through them. The pattern showed clear intent, clear purpose. The engineering was sophisticated. Each element supported the others. I documented everything according to protocol, took measurements, shot photos with scale markers, made detailed sketches. The structure's dimensions were precise: height, 8 feet 2 inches, width, 6 feet 4 inches, depth, 4 feet 8 inches. Opening faced east, perfectly level base, symmetrical construction. The weaving pattern showed skill, intelligence. The branches weren't just bent, they were interlocked, supported each other, created a stable structure that could bear weight. This wasn't random animal behavior. This was construction, creation, Design. We photographed it, measured every angle, documented every detail. Then we marked the ground around it with survey string. Standard procedure: monitor for new activity, record any changes. The second structure appeared the next morning, 20 feet from the first. Same basic design, but larger, more complex. The construction showed evolution, learning, improvement. My hands shook measuring it. 15 years of studying primitive structures hadn't prepared me for this. The sophistication was beyond anything I'd seen. The intelligence behind it was undeniable. That night I set up observation equipment, motion-activated cameras, infrared sensors, audio recorders, light meters, temperature sensors. The first sounds came at 2:13 a.m. Heavy footsteps, breaking branches, the motion sensors triggered. The cameras started recording. The temperature dropped suddenly, 10 degrees in 2 minutes. Then the vocalization started, low at first, building to something structured, patterned, not animal calls, not random noise. This was communication. The audio recorders captured everything. Through my tent wall, I saw shadows, large shadows, multiple shadows, moving with purpose, with coordination. The sound of construction was clear, branches bending, saplings being woven, tools being used. My heart pounded against my ribs. Sweat soaked my sleeping bag. Professional training kept me still. Keep recording. Document everything. Don't interfere. Just observe. The construction sounds lasted 2 hours. The shadows moved constantly. The work never stopped. The coordination was clear. The purpose was obvious. They were building something. Dawn showed their work. A new structure, bigger than the others, more complex. The construction showed clear evolution. Height, 9 feet 4 inches. Width, 8 feet 2 inches. Depth, 6 feet 6 inches. Multiple chambers. Internal supports. Woven roof. The engineering was beyond primitive. The support structure showed understanding of weight distribution. The weaving pattern created water-resistant surfaces. The design showed clear purpose, clear intent. We documented everything: detailed photographs, precise measurements, material analysis, construction techniques, tool marks, ground disturbance patterns. The evidence was overwhelming: deliberate design, complex engineering, tool usage, material selection, structural knowledge, construction skills. That evening, we set up more equipment, additional cameras, better audio recorders, infrared video, motion sensors, temperature monitors, seismic sensors. The builders returned at 1:45 a.m. The cameras caught everything. The figures were huge, 8 feet tall minimum, covered in dark fur, moving with purpose, with coordination, with intelligence. They brought tools, stripped branches used as levers, sharpened sticks for weaving. The tool use was sophisticated, deliberate. They understood mechanical advantage, understood construction principles. The vocalizations were constant, structured, patterned. They were communicating, coordinating, planning. The audio recorders captured it all. The analysis later would show clear language patterns. I watched through a gap in my tent. My hands shook, holding my notebook. My heart raced, but I kept writing, kept documenting. Professional training overrode fear. Record everything. Every detail matters. The construction methods showed expertise: material selection, size grading, load distribution, joint design, weather protection, internal ventilation. They worked until dawn. The new structure was their most complex: multiple levels, internal passages, storage areas, water management ventilation systems, complex supports. The evidence was undeniable: tool usage, material knowledge, engineering skill, construction expertise, communication ability, social coordination. We spent the day documenting structure details, construction methods, material usage, tool marks, communication patterns, work organization. The analysis showed clear intelligence, complex planning, problem-solving, tool creation, material understanding, social cooperation, knowledge transfer. The laboratory results confirmed it. Tool marks showed deliberate shaping. Material selection showed understanding. Construction showed engineering knowledge. Patterns showed cultural transmission. Evidence showed social learning. Data showed intelligent creation. We withdrew from the site, left cameras recording. The building continued, each structure more complex, more sophisticated. The evidence mounted. Continued evolution of design, improvement in techniques, development of methods, expansion of scope, growth of complexity, advancement of skills. The structures still stand, still show intelligence, still prove something exists, something that can think, plan, create, build, communicate, learn. The evidence exists. Photos document everything. Measurements prove precision. Analysis shows intelligence. Data confirms creation. Records prove existence. Facts show truth. That's what happened. Every detail exact, every observation precise, every fact documented. Take it as scientific data, nothing more, nothing less. The structures remain. The evidence exists. The truth stands clear. Something intelligent lives in these forests. Something that can think, plan, build. Something that exists despite our disbelief. That's my report. Every word true, every detail accurate, every fact verified. The structures tell the story. The evidence proves it. Something intelligent creates in these forests. Something real, something undeniable. The research continues. The documentation grows. The evidence mounts. But the truth is already clear. Something exists here. Something that thinks. Something that builds. Something that creates with purpose and skill. That's what we found. What we documented. What we proved. Take it as scientific fact. As professional observation. As verified truth. Something intelligent builds in these forests. Something real. Something that exists despite our inability to explain it. Story 20. My name is Klaus Weber. I've been a park guardian in the North Cascades for 16 years. What I encountered during that storm last winter wasn't in any park service manual. January 8, 2024. A severe winter storm hit the park. Temperature 26 degrees, wind gusts up to 50 mph, heavy snow reducing visibility to less than 10 feet. I was doing an emergency patrol. 3 hikers were reported overdue, standard search protocol. I had my usual gear, emergency kit, radio, GPS unit, cold weather survival equipment. At 3:15 p.m. conditions worsened. The storm intensified. Wind chill dropped to 15 degrees. Visibility near zero. I needed shelter. Found a cave entrance on the eastern slope. Standard procedure in severe weather. Get out of the wind. Waited out. The cave entrance was small. Had to duck to enter. Inside it opened up. Ceiling height about 12 feet. Extended back about 30 feet. I switched on my flashlight. Did a standard cave check. Looking for animal occupants. Checking for hazards. That's when I saw the marks. Deep scratches in the rock walls. Not bear, not mountain lion. Something else. The scratches were high. 8 feet up. Deep grooves in solid rock. Recent. The exposed stone was still light-colored. My flashlight beam caught something on the cave floor. A bed of sorts. Woven branches. Grass. Leaves. Not natural formation. The construction was deliberate. Complex. The branches were interlaced. The grass was layered for insulation. Someone built this. A smell hit me then. Strong. Musky. Like wet fur, but different. My nose started burning. My hands began to shake. The flashlight beam wavered. Sweat formed despite the cold. More details emerged. Bones in one corner. Clean, sorted by size. Not scattered like animal feeding. Food remains. Berry seeds. Nutshells. Arranged in distinct piles. Organized. Deliberate. The storm howled outside. Snow blocked most of the entrance. I was trapped here. Had to wait it out. I radioed dispatch, reported my position. The signal was weak. Static filled the channel. That's when I heard it. Heavy footsteps in the snow outside. Something big. Something walking on two legs. My heart rate spiked. My mouth went dry. The radio slipped from my sweaty hand. A shadow appeared at the cave entrance. Massive. The snow made it hard to see clearly. The figure had to duck to enter. Tall, very tall, at least 8 feet. Broad shoulders, covered in dark fur. Snow clung to its fur. Ice crystals caught my flashlight beam. The creature shook itself like a dog. It saw me immediately. No surprise, no aggression, just awareness. The eyes were dark, intelligent, forward-facing. They reflected my flashlight with a red-gold shine. The creature made a sound, deep, resonant. It vibrated the air in the cave. More shadows at the entrance, 2 more figures, similar size. They entered one at a time. They moved with purpose, organized. Each went to specific areas of the cave. One began working with the branch bed, adjusting, repairing, adding fresh materials. Another sorted through the food piles, organized them, added something from a pouch-like fold of skin. The first one watched me, kept making those deep sounds. The others responded. Different tones, different patterns. They were communicating, complex exchanges, organized sounds, like a language. I stayed absolutely still, my back pressed against the cave wall. The flashlight beam shook in my hand. The first creature approached me. Slow steps, deliberate movement, no aggression. It reached out one massive hand, pointed at my radio, then at the storm outside, then back at me. The meaning was clear. No calls. Stay here. Wait out the storm. I nodded. Simple gesture. Universal understanding. The creature nodded back. Actually nodded. Human gesture. Deliberate communication. They settled into the cave, arranged themselves around the space, left me my corner. The storm raged for hours. The temperature dropped further. Snow sealed the entrance. They were adapted to the cold. Their fur was thick. Their bodies generated heat. The cave stayed relatively warm. Their body heat raised the temperature noticeably. I documented everything in my notebook. Times, descriptions, measurements, standard procedure. They watched me write, showed interest in my pen, in the markings I made. One of them made marks in the dirt, deliberate patterns, not random scratches. The storm continued until midnight. 9 hours in that cave, 9 hours of observation. They maintained clear social structure, distinct roles, organized behavior. The sounds never stopped. Constant communication, different tones for different purposes. At 12:30 a.m., the storm began to ease. The wind dropped. The snow slowed. The creatures prepared to leave, organized their space, checked their food stores. The first one turned to me again, made that nodding gesture, then pointed to my radio. The meaning was clear again. Don't call yet. Give them time to leave. I nodded back. Agreement, understanding. They left one by one, silent despite their size. Disappeared into the snowy night. I waited 30 minutes, counted every second, then made my radio call. Search and rescue found me at 2:15 a.m. Standard rescue procedure. I reported taking shelter from the storm. The cave looked different in multiple flashlight beams. The evidence remained. The branch bed, the food piles, the scratches high on the walls. I took photos, used my radio for scale, documented everything. Back at Ranger Station, I examined my notes, wrote my official report, stuck to the facts, times, weather conditions, taking shelter. The rest went in my private journal, every detail, every observation. I sent hair samples to labs, photos to wildlife experts, audio recordings to biologists. The responses were uniform, interesting but inconclusive. Unknown species markers, unidentified vocalizations. I've been back to that cave many times, always find new evidence, fresh branch beds, new food stores, recent scratches on the walls. They still use it, still maintain it, still leave signs of their presence. The scratches continue up the walls, new marks, higher reaches of the cave. Sometimes I find tools, simple ones, stones worked into shapes, branches stripped and smoothed. The evidence mounts, the documentation grows, but they control what I see, what I find, what I can prove. I'm a park guardian. I deal in facts, in clear evidence, in documented proof. But what I encountered that night doesn't fit those categories. The proof sits in my files, photos, samples, recordings, everything properly documented, everything following protocol. But protocols don't cover this, don't explain what shared that cave with me. Something intelligent lives in these mountains, something that builds shelters and uses tools. The evidence is there, in my reports, in my samples, in that cave. They're still out there, still using that cave, still leaving signs. And sometimes during winter storms, I think about those eyes, intelligent eyes that looked at me and decided to share their shelter, that understood my radio, that knew what it meant. The cave remains, the evidence grows, and somewhere in these mountains, they're watching, learning, understanding, choosing what to reveal, just enough to make their presence known, but never enough to prove it completely. They're too intelligent for that, too aware of what proof would mean, so they keep using the cave, keep leaving signs, but always on their terms, always under their control. The documentation continues, the evidence mounts, and in every winter storm, I wonder if I'll meet them again, if they'll choose to share their shelter once more with someone who kept their secret. Story 21. The thermal imaging didn't lie. No animal moves like that. No human generates that heat pattern. What I recorded that night showed something impossible, something that watched, something that understood it was being studied. My name is Lars Eriksson, wildlife biologist specializing in nocturnal predator behavior. 20 years of field research. The incident occurred during a standard owl population study in the Olympic National Forest. The date was August 8, 2023. I ran these night studies twice a month. The location never changed. 47-42, 18-5, N1-23-51, 44.2 W, elevation 3,450 feet. The spot was perfect for barred owl observation. Dense old-growth forest, multiple water sources, abundant prey species. My equipment was state-of-the-art. FLIR thermal imaging camera, night vision goggles, digital audio recorder, motion sensors, weather station, everything calibrated and tested before each session. That night started normally. I arrived at 8:30 p.m. Sunset was at 8:47 p.m. Temperature held steady at 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Light wind from the northwest. Perfect conditions for thermal imaging. The observation blind sat 20 feet up a Douglas fir. Standard platform design, three-sided shelter, transparent roof, clear view of the study area, equipment mounted on stable brackets, everything by protocol. Owl activity started at 9:15 p.m. Normal patterns, hunting swoops, territory calls. The thermal camera tracked their heat signatures, standard temperatures, normal movement patterns, everything documented and recorded. The change came at 11:22 p.m. The owls went silent, not gradually, all at once. The thermal imaging showed them retreating, moving away from something that registered as a massive heat signature. My hands tightened on the camera controls. The image showed clear bipedal movement. The heat pattern was wrong for a bear, wrong for any known animal. The temperature reading shocked me, 101.3 degrees Fahrenheit, too hot for any regional wildlife. The figure moved with purpose. The thermal image showed smooth motion, controlled steps, the height calculated against known tree dimensions, approximately 8 feet, the body mass estimate from the heat signature, over 700 pounds. My heart pounded against my ribs. Sweat ran down my face despite the cool night air. But professional training kicked in. Keep recording. Document everything. The camera captured every detail. The thermal signature showed clear anatomical features. Long arms, massive shoulders, proportions all wrong for a human, all wrong for any known animal. The heat distribution pattern suggested dense muscle mass, heavy bone structure. It moved through the forest like it owned it, each step placed with certainty. No hesitation, no searching. It knew exactly where it was going. The thermal image showed it scanning its surroundings, moving its head methodically, studying the area. The temperature readings made no sense. The core temperature stayed above 101 degrees. No heat loss in the extremities, perfect circulation. The pattern suggested a metabolism unlike anything known to science. At 11:45 p.m., it stopped. The head turned toward my blind. The thermal image showed clear eye focus, direct eye contact through 20 feet of darkness. The intelligence in that gaze froze the blood in my veins. Those eyes knew what they were looking at, knew I was there, knew about the camera. The head tilted slightly, studying, considering. The behavior showed clear cognitive processing, clear understanding. The vocalization started at 11:47 p.m. The audio recorder captured everything. The sound pattern showed structure, repetition, meaning. The frequency analysis later would prove it wasn't random noise, wasn't animal calls. This was communication. The figure moved closer. The thermal image showed every detail. The muscle movement was smooth, coordinated. The joint articulation was precise. The biomechanics were unlike anything in my 20 years of study. At 50 feet from my blind, it stopped again. The thermal signature shifted. The temperature increased. 101.8 degrees, 102.1 degrees, 102.4 degrees. The pattern suggested voluntary metabolic control, impossible for any known species. The head turned slowly, scanning methodically. The eye movement pattern showed purpose, intelligence. The thermal image caught subtle facial movements, expressions, communications. Another vocalization came, different pattern, higher frequency. The sound made my chest vibrate, made my teeth hurt. The audio analysis later would show complex harmonic structures, language patterns. The figure raised its arm. The thermal image showed clear finger articulation, 5 digits, opposable thumb. The hand pointed directly at my camera. The gesture was deliberate, meaningful, communication. My hands shook on the controls. The camera kept recording. The thermal pattern stayed clear. The behavior pattern showed undeniable intelligence, undeniable awareness, undeniable purpose. At midnight, it moved away. The motion was smooth, unhurried. The thermal signature stayed strong until it passed beyond range. The temperature readings remained constant. The movement patterns stayed precise. I sat in that blind until dawn. Couldn't move, couldn't think, just kept the camera recording, kept documenting. The thermal image ran for 6 hours, captured everything, proved everything. The evidence was clear, consistent, 101, 102 degrees body temperature, perfect thermal regulation, bipedal movement patterns, clear cognitive behavior, deliberate communication, obvious intelligence. The data filled 3 hard drives, 6 hours of thermal video, digital audio recordings, temperature readings, movement tracking, behavior patterns, environmental data. The analysis took weeks. Heat signature, unlike any known species, movement patterns showing clear intelligence, vocal patterns indicating language behavior showing awareness, evidence of technological understanding, proof of cognitive processing. The thermal images still exist, still show something impossible, still prove something intelligent lives in these forests, something that can think, something that can communicate, something that knows it's being studied. I still run the owl study, still use the thermal camera, still document everything, But now I watch for that heat signature, wait for that temperature pattern, know that something's out there, something intelligent, something aware. The evidence doesn't lie. The thermal imaging proves it. The temperature readings confirm it. The behavior patterns demonstrate it. Something exists in these forests, something that generates impossible heat patterns, something that shows impossible intelligence. That's what happened that night. Every detail exact, every reading precise, every observation accurate. Take it as scientific data. The thermal imaging proves it. The measurements confirm it. The evidence verifies it. The research continues. The cameras keep recording. The data keeps mounting. But the truth is already clear. Something intelligent lives here. Something that functions beyond known biology. Something that exists despite scientific impossibility. I keep watching the thermal images, keep recording the temperature patterns, keep documenting the evidence, because I know what's out there, what generates that heat signature, what shows that intelligence, what exists despite our disbelief. The owls still go quiet when it appears, still show that fear response, still retreat from that heat signature. They know what's out there, know what moves through their forest, know what watches from the darkness. That's my report. Every word true, every reading accurate, every observation verified. The thermal imaging tells the truth. The temperature readings prove it. The evidence confirms it. Something exists here, something real, something that defies explanation. The cameras still run every night, still record every heat signature, still document every movement, because the truth needs to be known, needs to be proven, needs to be accepted. Something intelligent lives in these forests, something that generates impossible heat, something that exists despite our inability to explain it. That night changed everything I thought I knew about biology, about thermal patterns, about intelligence. The evidence exists. The proof is clear. Something lives in these forests, something that breaks all the rules, something that exists beyond our understanding.